Rearming. Look at this. Time to bring the pain. Grabbing ammo. I'll get those bastards for this. All right, eat this. Look at this. Time to bring the pain.
Bypassing deck. Clear. It's bypassing deck.
Rearming. Rearming.
Hey everybody, welcome. So today is this is like my third Sunday doing this stream, and it's actually got a name for it. So it's Fishing for Men and Digging for the Truth. And of course, this has always been about, and for me, at least as what in my new industry I'm trying to get into here, what we like to call tilling land, or as in like, Christians aren't as weird as you might think. We're normal people too. That kind of idea. Anyway, so basically what we're going to be talking about today's episode is going to be on early Christianity and how that affects Europe. Because whether you like it or not, this whole religion that came out of Israel, it's not European born, and we have like plenty of proof on that, affects like a huge, it literally shapes and changes the cultures in Europe. It changes Greece and stuff, Rome too. They more make that adapt for them. But when we look at Northern Europe, it just completely changes it. Where normally, if you don't go out and get that revenge and stuff, you're seen as you don't have power. If you can't defend yourself and your family, then you're not in any way strong. That's the way they viewed it, and you got to understand, like Europe, obviously at that time too, even still now, that's a much harsher climate than it is in up the north. I mean, it's very different, especially like in a place where this all kind of takes place. Believe it or not, one of the places where this really takes seed and takes root, and it's discussed, and it's this gorgeous book you can get here on Audible. It's actually called. This is not a Christian book, by the way. So I'd like to point it out that I'm going outside the Bible for a source about the Bible. But the idea here is that you can kind of just at least see that, like, whether you like Christianity or not, it's had its effect on the world, and there's a lot of good things that come out of it, and there's also bad things too. I could literally take any religion or belief system. It's going to work either way because that's how humans work. That has nothing to do with a belief system. It's not. Belief systems don't kill people. It's people who kill people. I hate to say it. That's unfortunately just the truth of the matter, right? I think a lot of the times we don't want to believe that we can be just as evil and downright mean as a group as we'd like to. I think we want to be better, and that's a super good thing. Otherwise, it would go so horribly bad. Anyways, but the book I'm talking about is written by a man named Thomas Cahill, and it's called How the Irish Saved Civilization. And that would be Western civilization, of course. That's what he's referring to, because Irish writing down old Japanese text and stuff to save those wasn't done. Don't get me wrong, that would be cool. I'd love to see a weird, like, time glitch TV show with, like, Doctor Who, where the Irish became samurais because somehow they got a hold of documents from the East in that area and not Western civilization, all because something got screwed up on it would even make a pretty funny Monty Python, or even that sort of, style of British humor, even, like, throw Rowan Atkinson's in there. I'm all for it. I'd watch it for hours, non-stop. No sleeping. No, I'm kidding. But I don't know. I may not sleep if it's really that good. But here we go. So the idea here today is we're going to get this fishing going, and we're going to give you guys some tips on fishing. You can make a lot of money just doing this.
Need anything?
And then we're just going to talk, like I said, I'm going to talk about just kind of the effect on how that works with early history and, like, why I think some of it's important to know that, whether you're a Christian or not. It doesn't, like, nothing you can do is going to change how that actually does and did and will continue to affect history. And it can be really good sometimes, right?
Can I help?
There's plenty of, like, AA. There's another one for America that's helped a lot of people, whether you take it seriously or not. It's not like you have to take it seriously all the time. I think it's good to tease stuff, right? If you don't think it's good to tease stuff, don't get married. Don't try to get in a relationship. I would just don't. Because we tease, that's human beings. Alright. And then, of course, I'm going to be buying, for the fishing trip, I'm just buying everything because it's nice to have a little bit. We're just going to get that. I'm not going to go over and get the crates over there. We're not going to get storage crates. You don't really need, we're going to need one storage crate.
I'm sure we'll find some.
I might actually go over here and take a look at see if we got a rowboat and stuff in store. This is where that big battle happened, literally right there. With that galleon. I remember that. Man, I was cursing. I have rewatched it. It's a great video. I was cursing. I was like, oh man. Not a bad thing. It's more like I'm trying to represent some people that don't agree that we should always talk like that. I don't know if it's. Yeah. Anyways, just try to keep the big picture, right? That's the idea. I mean, not cursing is. It's on my list of things to do, but I would rather treat people in a better than if I had to pick the two. You know what I mean? Like, you can either curse and treat people wonderful, or you can not curse, but you're gonna be a real rude, stiff-handed person. Well, I guess I'll take the cursing. That stings. Can I have a different option? Oh, man, come on. Anything? Controller batteries are low. That's good to know. Alright. And so I kind of put on a fisherman thing going on today. I don't know. I might switch it to more of that Hunter's Call. I got the sail on. I think last time I was fishing with my wife, but we weren't streaming, so yeah, maybe I should. Yeah, let's just go full fishing. I don't think I'm gonna put his wife on the front though. It's just kind of, I don't know, it feels weird. But I will put this one. Boom. See if does that fit better? Yeah, actually that does. Okay, cool. I'll buy it. And we'll get all our stuff, lights on and off, and we make plenty of money fishing. We're probably gonna head out to the Devil's Roar. That's one of our favorite places to fish. We got a reaper on, so it's probably a good idea to start out there and work our way out. Ooh! Oh, I haven't fixed it from the other day. That's not helpful. Wow, I still have the water on from the other day. It like saved the water. Come on, Rare! I can't save a storage crate, but I can save water?
Right?
Oh, it tastes sweet. Oh my gosh. Oh, I can see why they did that. Thank you, guys. Alright. So that's cool. Alright. Yeah, let's get the anchor up, kind of get going. So basically, how this basically goes is to really understand Christianity and like how it plays into everything. We got to understand that all human beings, we all, no matter how we want to, we all put our trust into something. And that's actually what the word faith means. That's the same idea. So basically what it's saying is, and it would also be like trust with no facts, right? Some people are like, well, Christianity is faith with no actual evidence. And that would be trust with no evidence that you can trust someone. And there are people who do that. We often call them gullible or suckers. And that's a word from suckling. It's an old they used to say, if somebody was, you know, a silver-tongued devil, right? And they were, con artists, you know, they would call it, they were a sucker. They would try to get you to suckle off of them, and they would milk you, basically. They were the suckling. So you were the sucker, they were the suckling. They were, it was a whole like cow and heifer idea, you know what I mean? The little calf, and the mom, that's, teats and babies, all that. That was actual reference. Of course, this is back before we got all, anybody who actually, like, works with their hands or works with animals, you're not like, oh my gosh, but people who don't, or might be like, wow, that is almost vulgar, or, I don't know, maybe you're on the other end of that, where you're like, I don't like that kind of stuff, and that's okay. I think it's a good thing, Anyway, so, basically, it starts off with, and we looked at this last time, this historical guy who a lot of people actually believed he was actually the Messiah of this Middle Eastern people. So if you can imagine, this thing is now not only caught fire, but it's starting to get, it's sent out some actual educated, like, no Latin, because believe it or not, the fishermen that followed this guy who called himself a teacher, like he has a new way, and there were 3 head teachers that we looked back then. That's the biblical kind of perspective. As what I mean, like people who actually study the Bible, whether you're a Christian or not, you can still it's still just a book, right? It's what's in the book. It's not the pages itself. You're not gonna like catch flame or something weird. That would be silly, ridiculous, and if you do, please put that on YouTube, because that would be like, wow. I'd be very impressed. Okay, how'd you even do that? So the idea here is that it spreads, but it spreads through this guy who, in his name is Saul, in the old Hebrew, right? And then in Latin, or what would be more like English today, or even Chinese. Latin is pretty much used by everybody to communicate, and we still kind of do that today. Obviously, like I said, English is one of the more dominant languages, as well as Chinese. So, and we call his name in that is Paul, and of course we all know him. But the reason why I bring that guy up is because he's one of the first people to spread this. Really a Jewish Hebrew religion that came out of their original one. It's like a sect, and you'd even be considered more of like this. It wouldn't even be taken all that seriously as like following their original teachings. That's the kind of funny part. And so it spreads out from there with the Greeks. The Greeks who are really good at they love philosophy. They love thinking about the big questions, like stuff we're talking about right now. This is like their bread and butter, like especially in Athens. Even, believe it or not, even the Spartans have their own way of thinking the hard questions through. They like to whittle it down to an easy concept that is like a lot like warfare commands, where it's like short and simple, and it works. It's got to work, and it's got to work perfectly every time. And that, ironically, that is kind of how warfare goes. That's how's their thing. So now let's get. Yeah, I see that guy. He's at Reaper's Hideout. What level is he? Ooh, level 5. Oh, right. Thank Jesus. All right, so now we've just gotten to the part there. And if you look at this, it's really only spread through, as it starts to evolve through the Roman Empire. It actually goes to this part where it's like this underground secret religion where they get blamed for the unfortunate burning of Rome. And they're even, it was just such a weird way, and like, believe it or not, even like Judaism and stuff, like the way it kind of reads sometimes, it can seem very xenophobic in some ways, because it really does draw a line where it's like, we have the Jews, and then you have the Gentiles, you have the clean, and then you have the dirty, and it can seem that way, but these are also concepts. It's kind of like the original meaning of holy war was not, it's not like kill everybody in that way. That's changed from the coined, the pre-concept. The concept we understand with that, though, actually is coined during, with Salah-ad-Din during the time of the Crusades. So, and that, I mean, that's no different from some of the stupid wars we see today. It's just absolutely irritating to me. I hate that people kill each other over dumb stuff like that. I think it's just like the most ridiculous, like, really? That's what we're doing, huh? That's the plan? That is a dumb plan.
Where do you...
But I think, well, you want to go to the Devil's War, or we could go up north, wherever he's at.
It's up to you. I was figuring the Devil's Roar just because staying out of his side, but it's up to you.
I figured let's go north and see what you got. What do you got for, I see a storm out? I can hear one. I don't see one. Oh, it's right in front of us. Ready? So we got...
What side is that in?
This is in the something of plenty, Shores of Plenty.
The Shores of
Yeah,
Plenty?
that's where we're at right now, and that's where the storm is. Looks like, I don't know if it's going to stay in the Shores of Plenty, but it's definitely in the Shores of Plenty.
So are we staying in the Shores of Plenty then?
I figured just go north for now. I mean, I was going to follow that storm, see if we can't get some more stormfish for you. Because you need, don't you need the one from the ancients, right? The one from there? Oh, perfect. I'll start. This will give us an idea of where we're going then. So, Lone Cove. That's literally on the tip of the Lone Cove. Looks like somebody just dropped it off and did that. Where is that one?
Alright, I grabbed like 5 for now. Can always come back later.
Anyway, so it spreads from there, and there's also some of the resentment and misunderstanding that happened with Rome during that time is because Israel had been pushing back, along with a bunch of other countries, Roman, what they believed to be oppression, which obviously, like today we'd say it is, but they've been pushing against that, and it's actually, believe it or not, Rome came in and wipes them out here. I think it's like in 400 something or whatever, but the idea is that not even 400. No, it was like way sooner than that. Anyways, Rome comes in and actually just decimates the entire ground, and they're only allowed to go back to their holy city once a year on like a holiday, which is just kind of it was a slap in the face altogether with that. So, and this isn't like something new for Rome to do that kind of thing. You got to remember they totally like salted the ground with Carthage, and that's not like, I shouldn't say that's what Rome always does. It's just that Rome really did believe that they were the only ones who could bring any kind of actual peace to everybody, and that's called Pax Romana. And that's peace through force. That people have to be made to get along, otherwise we will inevitably kill each other. And then there's nothing that can stop that. And so that is an interesting philosophy in itself. We can actually look today and say, can you think of anything today where we're literally the laws go aside, right? Or we don't have as many cops or something, and people start acting crazy, killing each other again? Do we really have to force each other? Like, that's the idea, right? You can kind of look at it today in an observation and say, huh, that's, might be onto something, right? And that would be super sad. I don't think people have to. I think you have to change people's perspectives and beliefs in order to change an emotional reaction. That way you can do it, because it's, I mean, we're just as much as animals in some ways. We can make choices and react versus our normal reactions. We can change the way we do things, but that's not, we're not quick change. Somebody is sad about going gourmet. We don't have quick change. You know, there's no super secret to that. We're very much animals that have a hard time. Everything has a hard time with changing. Essentially, though, that the observations of science are not all together wrong on small, minor evolution of adapting to the environment around us. And that's actually what gives rise to that larger, like, ape to man and that sort of idea, where they say dinosaurs are bird, or they used to say that. I don't think they're even saying it anymore. We're watching it with my son. They're kind of like, you know, a lot of these guys are like, looks like they're warm-blooded, that dinosaurs are, that they could be, maybe not all of them, but they know that some of them are, and some of them look like, have feathers like that, not meant for, they're not actually meant for flying, but they are meant for keeping warm, like you would find with feathers on small chicks. Now, of course, there's a lot of, I shouldn't say debate on how those work. We already know that those feathers do that because we can test it out. One of the problems with what we have with science based upon theory is that it's very hard to get anything to test stuff out on, right? It's difficult. And I have huge respect for the sciences that do that, because that's you have to literally tell everybody when you start out. They don't do it as often. They're starting to do it more, I think, just because of backlashes or just how people are like, well, how can I believe you? But they're starting to, let people more, let's do a National Geographic of dinosaurs. The first thing you hear is like, this is an assumed assessment of how this works. And it's nice that they're kind of telling you this is a theory. And it's also in some ways up to us to remember like what a theory, what that actually means, right? A hypothesis. I kind of try to think back to 5th grade in science and Mr. Reinhardt's. But what this has to do is we're kind of still talking around the same origins that, believe it or not, there are huge chunks of our own history that we have nothing but writing materials for stories and not evidence. And so this is important. One of the reasons is because the writing materials we get is a part of this story. Now that I'm kind of bringing it back. So we got to remember that prior to Rome, what we are told by Rome, so that's an important part there. So prior to Rome, what we're told what the world is like by Rome, that didn't say like what the Germans were talking, letting you know how they were before they met the Romans on the Rhine. No, this is just Rome telling you what they thought everybody else thought. So it's kind of an odd, that's where we get a lot of our history, and believe it or not, that's where we get some of the guys I was talking about with the history before. Most of our history that from any time of that pre-Renaissance comes from either Greece, Rome, or even Egypt, and that's why we actually concentrate on those as our main cultures that when you learn about Western history and stuff, that's what we use, which is kind of funny because it obviously doesn't. Western history doesn't start in the West. We've adapted to it, and the reason is because of some Irish monks. So, and this starts off with a essentially a British. He's not. Some will say he's Welsh, but he's you could say he's Cymru, right? So because this is before Wales is Wales, so the people of that we know as Wales, and we kind of have a idea of who they are genetically and their history and all that. They were spread all over. They were just called the British, and they still there today. But they're not influenced by any other culture other than Rome, and they actually kind of like it. There's baths, there's commerce from all over the world. They'd already been trading their gold, believe it or not. These Welsh and these British people, these Cymru, these countrymen. That's what that means. All over the world already. And you can see that on. You can Google it. Just Google history of Wales. It has an awesome YouTube video on it. And let me see if I can just Google, give you the actual name. But awesome YouTube video, and he actually explains some of this on this video. What I'm talking about is that these people that we all, thank you, baby, pulled together, and we call them the Celts. That's a modern invention. There's no such thing as, they didn't call themselves the Celts. One thing is the C is pronounced wrong. It'd have been like Celts, really hard, like cup, and then also we also have to. There's all linguistic differences. So they spoke. If you're American and listen to this, you'll understand that if you go to Texas, they go a little bit, talking a bit different down there. And New York, and Boston, and obviously I'm from the West, so I almost sound like I'm loud and like I'm got hit on the head today. I'm a little bit slower. I open my mouth a whole bunch. Well, people from Tennessee don't. They have in Pennsylvania, that area, don't open their mouth all the way, so they're quieter. They take it. So there's different cultures, but we all speak English. And we have people coming here to learn to speak English, and that's a great example of what we can see, where people have a similar culture, something that ties them all together, that we can be like, there's something there. We just don't have a bunch of archaeological proof, but we do know that they worship some of the same gods, like Cernunnos. He's the god of the grove. We know that they worshipped the Dark God, and he's always seen from Germany. He's said to love blood, and I'm trying to remember his name. Anyways, the point is that they already had trade routes established, even unto what we know as the Egyptian days. Like these people, these British people that literally spread across Europe, at one point they have very similar genetics. We like to call them haplogroups, meaning family groups. Really, that's all that means. Like if you have kids and stuff, right? You with your wife or a prospective person, and you've genetically passed your own seed on with this other person, you've created a new haplogroup. It sounds crazy. I was trying to figure out how the heck I can get back up here. But so that's what haplogroup means. It just means families, genetics. But those can spread, and we can trace, where people have been with that using bones in the dead. And that's why DNA has had such a huge explosion on Ancestry, is because they've been testing those. Like the Sheedinbroga, otherwise known as Newgrange in Ireland. They tested it and found out that there was some sort of little bit of incest in the royalty of Ireland. And, of course, that is also then, once again, founded to be true because of the grave Dom and Dorca. Dorca, or Dorf. Dove means dark or black, the color black, or dark, and that depends on how you use it in a sentence in the Old Irish in Gaeilge. Due to the fact that that the story that goes with that tomb or shrine, you could say that it was like a temple tomb, like because those two are associated with each other. They're not. Religion and death are not separate as they are these days. We got to remember that people back then have a different look on life. They're not stupider. They're building pyramids, right? We're still trying to figure out how to keep our roofs from leaking, while those old Irish have had Newgrange, which has been waterproof, leak-proof for over 5,000 years. So I would just like to point out, they're obviously onto something, while we're still like, I don't know why we went from stone to thatch, probably because it took 40 years just to build one. It's probably, necessity, right? That's what drives our progress as human beings. Anyways, so we're gonna get this idea that these people Rome just really helped. Oh no, that's no. There he is. So what Rome really does is they make it so that the roads that are already there, that we're starting to question, like, how did Rome know that this is a great place to do? Because you're not going to build a road anywhere else. They haven't built a road anywhere else, we know that. But you're going to need it to be in a certain area because of the flooding in Britain at times. So, be able to ask questions like that gives hints that Rome, which they're very well known for, Rome's not known for inventing things. They're known for taking other people's ideas, putting them together, and coming up with a better concept. Not a new concept, but a better concept. Like the guy who figured out how to slice bread, right? Let's just think about that for an example. Bread is an old idea. It's not like he took out sliced bread and was like, look what I got, a totally brand new kind of bread. No, he's like, hey, did you know you could slice this and pre-package it? People were like, what? So, right? It seems like it's a groundbreaking idea, but it's not a new idea. And believe it or not, another example is Einstein did the same thing. He suggested, because there's always some papers written on essentially space, as in speed and all that, and what we live in reality, and how that works with distance and travel and speed and time. Well, we all know what time is. You can look at a clock, right? You can see seasons go. Those are actually technically two different concepts, but let's just work with it, right? Are together, that they're not separate. That they actually move together, and that the faster you move, if you've seen the new Buzz Lightyear, the faster you move, the slower other people are going to be. You age slower versus, or everything that happens to you is happening super slower as you're going super fast versus other people. And there's also similar concepts, but I won't get into that kind of science. So the idea here is that these Celts, or these groups of other cultures, and the Germanic peoples, or the Rhines all over, it's not like they're separate or something. It's not like they have their own cultures and ideas and beliefs. They have their own roads, their own ways of doing things. But resources, on the other hand, they don't have a bunch of. And that's what Rome brings. Rome brings resources to everyone. And that's what really changes it. And that is also what allows massive amount of books to be throughout the empire. And that is really how Christianity spreads. Is that these writings that we like to call the Gospels, which are letters essentially, and the writings that with Paul, that's a big one, because he's the one who kind of flushes it out and helps people who aren't Jewish understand what's the heart of this Christ guy said. Not what's the heart of Judaism, because we got to remember, Jesus is this Jesus guy that we know is a historical person, has literally just upturned a lot of beliefs. He's made it more complicated in making something more simple, and it's one of those also. It's also one of those things where it's like, it's easy to say but really hard to do, right? We all know that. It's really easy to say, let's all be nice to each other. You don't need Jesus or something to understand that, right? I went to kindergarten, and there was the golden rule, and I know people who went to kindergartens that weren't Christian kindergartens and had golden rules, right? So it has nothing to do with Christianity on good and evil in that, as in like, you don't need to be a Christian to understand that concept. People aren't stupid, right? If you're a Christian, you understand that. If you're not a Christian, just know that we don't think you're a bunch of idiots. That's always, we do dumb stuff too. So there's an equality on being dumb in that way. You know, just being a regular old human, there's an equality to doing things that are wrong, and that's actually what the Bible says. Is it's that sin is what equals the playing field, or when we act the way we're not supposed to. Is really the definition of sin. When we go against the way we were created, that it's what why we are. Basically, if one kid steals in the other kid's lies and you don't want either one to do something, do it, then to you, it's still having to solve a problem, right? Sure, the problems may not be quite as equal, but still, on the main point, it's still two problems you gotta solve. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna let one go and the other one, that's why would you do that? No, it's like both of them are like, gosh, guys, come on. So that's that concept. So now we're going to bring on to, now we have an understanding that it's Paul who starts this missionary movement, and well, I shouldn't say starts it, but he's like the first one to go outside of the Middle Eastern area into the rest of us who aren't Jewish. So he's the one who really brings it, and it's kind of funny because he actually wanted to just stick into with Judaism and stuff and get God's people, who he considered God's people, right first. So, and it's kind of odd in that way how that worked out. Super weird. I mean, to Christians, it's not coincidental, but if we want to look at a third party's perspective, it is super odd because it's like this dude is like basically, if he went to teach a new idea, he would have gone to Harvard Business School, and he's going to be teaching business ideas. This is like a comparison, like a similar, but instead of going to other people like Microsoft or somewhere or Nintendo where they're going to need those big business ideas, he's now been sent to go work with the guys who have their small tire stores, small mom and pop businesses, to give them the big ideas. That's the general, that's how Paul's seeing it. Anyways, so, and that's important, it really is, because it gives him a little bit of validity on actually being a part of this and not just some guy who is jumping on the glory train. We got to remember that anytime we look at historical documents, any writing, doesn't matter if it's like Buddhism or doesn't matter if it's whatever religion. I'm not as familiar with those, but I've studied them, but I'm just not as familiar, so I'm not going to be speaking on something like that. I will be bringing people in sometime to be able to talk about that, because I think it's interesting to learn. It's good to know outside your own comfortability zone, right? You don't have to believe everything to know everything. We all know that, right? That's why the whole iced Eskimos idea kind of works out. All right. So let's get some worms here before. And so that was an island hopper. So this is where you get. So this island I'm here at today has the mossy island hoppers. So if I go to a different island, I'm going to be getting the different islands and the different groups. And what I mean by that, to talk some Sea of Thieves here, is that you have the Shores of Plenty, you have the Ancient Isles, the Devil's Roar, and of course we have the Wilds. And they're going to have different island hoppers per on the island, and island hoppers are only caught around islands. You cannot catch them out on the ocean. You've got to be near an island to catch them off an island kind of thing. They actually remind me of something we call bullfish where I'm at. If you fish off the dock in Western Washington, you can catch these things called bullfish, and they look a lot in some ways like these island hoppers. You can see how obviously good at talking. I have a lot of information. Drives my wife nuts sometimes. I don't blame her though. I drive a lot of people nuts with it. But he's got. It doesn't have the spikes, but it has a very similar shape. It has that fat kind of like the goopy look. But the bullfish actually has two spikes. It can that are connected to fins. It can pull up, and it has like bull horns. Don't want to get stung by them. It hurts, man. It'll cut you open pretty nasty. Oh no, Sam Chester, Treasure Captain. It's time for some action. Here we go. Oh wow, there was a keg right there. I didn't even really see that. It's dark in here. I've got a much darker screen. Alright, well, going to the ferryman. So, this spreads out, and as you can imagine, so obviously it catches on with Rome at some point, and the emperor becomes Christian, so everybody else needs to become Christian too. That's really how that spreads like crazy, because they go from like, you know, well, these Christians say they're inclusive, but they're not. So if you're like kind of like not big fan of Christianity, you should know it's always been that way. You should know it's not that your reservations against Christianity, or your even downright I hate those stupid ideas kind of thing, has been there for a long time. Believe it or not, like a lot of Romans had that same idea, and some of it is just like a fear of the unknown or misunderstandings, and that's why we have this show. And so I'm hoping to clear up some of those misunderstandings. So anyways, as this spreads out, we get to where we really get to more of a Rome starts to develop its own kind of Christianity, aside and a bit separate, alike but not the same as what starts with Paul. So you got to remember, these are Jews with Paul and stuff, who are Hebrews, right? Who are literally just kind of believing that their religion, their Messiah, has finally come, and so they're doing something that they've always believed in, and it's just kind of like that's their culture, right? Today, we would say that those Romans were culture appropriating the Hebrew faith, because they took it and it became, and they added some rules to it that weren't originally in those contexts. They added new traditions for the people. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to go too crazy with it, so that would be the one thing that is a bit wrong with it. But and that's not, has nothing to do with cultural appropriation. That's just being human. We take things too far, right? We just admit that. I know I do. We do stupid. Humans are great at doing stupid. Let's see, if there's anything we're really good at, it's doing stupid. Like, we got that down, like, bam. So, to kind of keep it going here, that gives us an idea that it goes from this small religion to this an actual historical guy that explodes out into Greece and stuff. At the time where some of the Greek gods are not seen by everybody as being real anymore, it starts to become this ethereal idea. Because you got to remember, or you may not know, that they have it's all religions and faith are all based upon becoming better than what we are. The difference is with Christianity, or like gods like that, it's the fact that they're saying that you can't do that by yourself. Whereas Buddhism and some of the other Greek philosophies do say man can become better by himself. So there's a bit of a difference on there. Hey guys. No. Ah, perfect. I might actually just do some fishing right here. This is a nice little thing. I like it. Heck yeah. I should get some leeches here, I bet. Maybe we can get some more island. Oh no! More island hoppers. Come on. Is this really all rock, or are they considering that? Ocean water. Ocean water it is. Alright. So, at this point, we have to understand that this is... We're talking about... As we're getting closer and closer, we're talking about that... Is that taken off by itself? That is an actual... Yeah. I just looked up and then it was moving and then I saw you. And it was like, is that... Is it taken off by itself? Really? So the idea is that as we got to understand that more people are starting to write about, because you could make a living back then being a writer, a historian, right? And it would be like streaming today, where it's less arduous than other jobs, and it's not like there's always been that kind of, you know, country bumpkin versus the city slicker mentality out there, believe it or not, where they believe if you don't have a higher level education, even at that time, that you were not intelligent in any way, which is completely wrong. But it just, that's humans, man. We're always been like that. I love history and it's funny, but it's also like, man, we repeat stuff so often and so much. You'd be really surprised. Like, history is like interesting in its own self. Like a lot of the stuff you find from Game of Thrones is literally just kind of a rewritten way of English history. And of course, after Game of Thrones, guess what happens? They come out with the War of the Roses and the White Queen, which is the War of the Roses, and those and a Spanish princess and all that. Those are also, that is the actual English history that has all that drama and intrigue and very interesting. You know, even you could go farther back from that time where a king actually like burns all the books in England and rewrites history and actually convinces people for, I think it's at least one generation or so, that history was different from what their fathers remember. So it's totally possible to lie to people in that way. It didn't stay for long, obviously. It never fully caught on. They just got some people, not everybody. And we can see that. That's today, right? That's literally the nature of politics. So, and that's what's happening with Rome as it's starting to change hands from the family dynasties at this time where Christianity starts to a militaristic dynasty where the military is starting to put people in charge, where generals are now going to be starting to get closer to being able to be emperors because they actually have the power to do it. Because remember, kings, queens, emperors, and all that are not decided by family genealogy. It's decided by who's got the biggest stick. We know that also because, well, you know, that's what Julius Caesar did, right? Right? We all think Julius
So
Caesar.
not much has changed in modern world.
No, it hasn't. So, I mean, Julius Caesar, right? We all think, like, we quote him all the time, you know, and, well, Julius Caesar said, well, remember, guys, Julius Caesar also goes in and he literally defies, defeats, and destroys a republic. That's a freedom-loving country, isn't it? So, he's made a hero and everybody loves him. Freedom falls. That's where we get from Star Wars. So, but that's an example of how it really hasn't changed in that way. So as the power play starts to happen, that's what. And Rome is starting to. You got Eastern and Western Rome by that time, and they're both working with this whole Christianity thing. It's catching on with poor folks because as you have more chaos in the government, you're going to have more poor. People get slipped through the cracks when that happens. And that's a warning to America and Britain and stuff today. Be really careful. We're having some chaos in our governments, and we've got overspending and all kinds of stuff. People are throwing out any idea as a solution, and, well, poor people suffer, man, every time for it. It really stinks, and it's super sad, but it's also good that, you know, that's kind of a good thing for Christians to even be in existence, because we've set up a lot of places to help with that. Most food banks, believe it or not. I'm not saying that, like, all the helpful places these days are as good-hearted as they used to be, or at least as they started with an idea. But they do help. You can't deny that they don't. I mean, I have heard bad things from a friend from Africa. He's from West Africa, a couple of them. They're not big fans of Red Cross, believe it or not. They think there's too much overspending on the money and it's not used the way it is. But that's their opinion, not mine. That's just what they, you know, that's what they think, and they can think that, and maybe that could actually help Red Cross become a little bit better. That's super weird. What did I walk into? Oh, my wife's doing okay. I was totally distracted. I should get to some fishing. That's what that tells me right there. Oh, no. Okay, that's cool. I'm just gonna go round in the roundabout. So, as we can see, the little bad thing about this, though, is what happens is this idea of Christianity does spread, and there are, believe it or not, the temperature changes. Like, it's weird how the world does tend to react with us, or we react to the world and politics in that way, right? As things go bad, we look to who's in charge, and they can't solve all problems, even though we blame them for it. It sounds weird, but that does happen. There's actually a bogman from Ireland. He was, or maybe it was in like France area, I don't remember, but anyways, he was a king, and he was in Ireland, and both his nipples were cut off. He was a Ree, which means a ruler, not necessarily a king the way we think it. They had worked very differently for them. You weren't king because your mom or dad were king. They had a different system, almost voting too. By the way, it was almost more similar to like a republic, believe it or not, for the old Irish than it was than what we would think for how king and kingship goes. That's closer to us being modern times. The idea of that your son should be in charge after you, and it's obviously that idea's been around for a while. It's a way of just keeping power. It has nothing to do with because somebody had a magic lubricant stick, if you know what I mean. You know, because that's the only way I could think that would actually work. You know, or maybe the woman's baking oven. No, not the rocks. Has some sort of magical lining or something to be able to make, you know, guarantee a person's gonna be a good person. A really good ruler, you know, is a guarantee. Man, I mean, that sounds like a tall story, but people actually believe that, believe it or not. And it kind of makes sense. I mean, it's nothing to do with as much as education has to do with fear. Humans react to fear, and we live in if you live in some of the first world countries, we live in worlds and ideas that are much softer than the rest of the world lives in today, and what our ancestors lived in today. So if we think we got it hard, like, dude, I've been homeless before. You have no idea. When your priorities are food, water, and shelter, and you gotta all have it at certain hours of the day, you start looking at things very differently. You also end up having a lot more to do in your free time too, which is really weird. See why books come on. I'd still rather. You can only stare at the clouds for so many days. Yeah, cool, that worked. Ooh, I wish I was reloaded very well. Man, fun. Perfect. All right. So, to get further, what we know is really expands. It sounds weird, but it does. For Western civilization, it really starts with, it sounds weird, but St. Patrick. That Cymru guy I was talking about earlier. So, we know that there's been problems with that Roman Catholicism or Roman Christianity and their writings. They're trying to consolidate power. They're trying to, and what I mean power is control. They're trying to not let anybody say whatever they want with Christianity. They want it to kind of have an organization. Rome is really good. Even Italians today, I think, kind of have an idea for organization. They're really, really good at that. They have a knack at it. You could say that's the natural way of thinking that their culture has developed, and that could be seen back then with them, which is really, really cool. I'm not saying everything they did was, obviously, I don't agree with genocide, but hey. And what we see, though, with what saves it with the Irish is a fascination to always want to grow and learn, and whatever avenue they're trying to learn. Now, prior to St. Patrick going there and bringing this god that is three gods, and that was a little easier for them to swallow, believe it or not. Sounds weird, because they have gods that are three gods. And the Celts also, that same sort of thing. They had some gods that were three gods. So it was not as hard for everybody to understand a concept that there's something greater and different from you. They already had that. That really wasn't the argument. That really wasn't what won people over. You gotta remember that, like, for at least the first start of European Christianity, how it started, it was way more closer to what we like of like homeless shelters and stuff, you know. It was way more closer to helping people, like what we as human beings want us to be like, right? than what we associate with some of the negativity of it today. And there's a lot, man. There's a lot, and it saddens me because, like I said, we're not all like that. Some of us are still kind of, you know, to the helping people. Don't get me wrong, I'm just as stupid, but, and you know, St. Patrick had his issues too. But my point is that so it starts really with a boy who grew up in a British home under this Roman Catholic or Roman Christian values, and his dad was, believe it or not, was not his dad, but his dad was probably his dad was some sort of nobility, you could say, not royalty, but nobility, as in to say, jerk, as in to say that his dad has money, he's got his own plantation, and he's fixing to go into school. He even writes about it. We have his writings. We have some of it that we actually know are from him. That he talks about how he was not a big fan of Latin, so he's just starting to learn Latin. So he's not very old. I think he's like 9 or 10, something like that. But he's just a young boy. And then, of course, what happens at that time is what we have is Irish slavers. That's not the same as what... It's similar, but in either way, it's just disastrous. Any kind of slavery is wrong. Like, it doesn't matter how it looks, because, yeah, there's some slavery we would think, like in the old Greek days, that's a little bit more... people are treated like human beings, versus what we know from what you might be familiar with in America, where it's exactly the reverse. It's not treated as human beings, but either way, that person has no control over their life. That's the that's the thing. We actually learning more about Pompeii today, and we got to these days they're doing all kinds of cool genetic research and stuff. Finally unearthing it. They finally, basically what it is they finally got money to actually do that. That's often where you hear about a discovery and then you don't hear anything. Well, they're getting money, they're doing the research, and they're finally getting money. Again, it has to do with money and getting enough to actually do what they want. Trophy Amber Plentiful Fin. Oh my gosh. This is like one of the ones. So the Plentiful, right? That tells you it's from this area. The plunder or whatever.
Seas of Plenty.
Seas of Plenty. Thank you. And Amber is just the killer. It's it's a trophy. So which means if it's a trophy, that means there's also a Plentiful Fin out here, a regular one. This is gonna be worth more. I don't think I've got anything but trophies so far. Ouch! Really? That's ironic. I just got bit by a snake. I mean, come on. That's like the bad guy, right, in the beginning of the Bible? Like, other than the fact Satan, but the snake, right? That's supposedly the very basic idea, right? I just think it's kind of funny that they put that out. Oh, no! Oh, no! Really? Whoa, what? Oh, my gosh! I lost it, and then it was in the water, and I was able to pick it up. Woo!
That's cool.
Thank you, big man! See? I'm just saying, like, from a Christian point of view, God likes video games too. That's really cool. That's super cool. I've never seen that. I didn't even know you could do that. So I caught it. It broke the line, and it still somehow caught it. Was able to get it out of the water. So luck of the draw, coincidence. You know, that has to do with how you look at reality. That is, you know, because realistically, humans, we're fumbling in the darkness. We hardly know what we're doing. Good enough to kind of get things going, but not good enough to do it perfectly. I used to do construction, so trust me, like, it's easier to mess up than you think. All it takes is one person wanting to be in charge, or miscommunication, or somebody being hurried. It's not always like somebody, you know, being in a negative manner. Sometimes it's just like dude didn't have enough time, or the company didn't have enough money to expand the plan so that you can see every little detail. And I mean, I was warned on that, so I've made my mistakes where I missed a line, and that was crucial because it was telling me where a certain line was for lining something up. And then when we're talking about like massive bolts that a structure sits on top of that I was building, you kind of want that to be perfect. You don't want to be off. That's bad, you know, because then gravity pulls it down, right? So, but that's, like I said, that's my example of, like, as we make mistakes as humans, and it's crazy that we ever think people are gonna be perfect. What? Whoa. That's my wife. My buddy, leave it here. You ready to go? Ready to go. Okay, cool. Let's get off this island. So that's what she's saying. Cool. I'm a little bit of a thickhead. A little bit slow. Not quick on the uptake. Oh my gosh. A bunch of knowledge that doesn't have direct relevance unless you put it together in certain ways, right? That's the idea. Anyway, so it does sound funny, but what we can see is that with the prospect of Saint Patrick, who was taken as a slave to work as a shepherd, like he had a job, and he got paid in food. Essentially, you're not paid in money. You don't get to choose what you do with your resources. You are given the resources, and then you're told to do it. And he slept outside all the time. I mean, honestly, this dude had a pretty, like, being a shepherd, whether a slave or not, and even how they do it these days with shepherds, it is not like, working outside, guys, is not a fun thing. It sounds cool at first, like, oh, you get to be outside on these beautiful sunny days. You're also outside when it rains, when it's freezing cold, when the rain's coming down like someone's peeing from heaven, when it's just, it's just miserable outside, which is, if you have all 4 seasons, that's 2 of the 4 seasons, right? If you have, like we do here, 2 seasons, well, that's a whole half of a year or more. So, working outside sounds like a fun idea, not always.
I gotta get a rowboat.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, because our rowboat has my fish. Is it on the other side? Oh, there it is. I see it. So, and why this is interesting and important and this is, I want to make this very clear, this is Patrick's story of how God saved him, and it is, again, one of those things that if you don't believe in God, all it means is this Patrick guy had a bunch of very lucky coincidences, and it worked out perfectly for him, and he was literally half the time spouting about a Hebrew God, and it was still been seen as a Hebrew God because Christianity hasn't spread to everybody at that time. It's pretty much like about the days of Patrick, all you have is anywhere Rome touched, which is already disappearing really quick, and it's only been there for like, a couple of generations. Basically, your great-grandfather is at that time, like, that's what Rome is to the people of Britain and stuff, and the people of, it's not like Spain or Hispania, where they've had Rome, and they've known Rome, and they've known, the Romans and Carthaginians, and I mean, their culture developed along with those people, so it's they're familiar with them, I mean, they traded with them. No, this is like, they've said in books that to the Irish or the Caledonians or the Scottish, it's this, or even the Germans of the Rhine, a Roman emperor would have been kind of really weird. Like, where are you from? Huh? And we have to do what you say. Why? That was kind of the idea. It was just like, who are you? Like, obviously you're not even from here. You don't quite look like us, so you're gonna come tell us that you're in charge. Or, entice you with trade, right? And there's rumors about this Rome too, and it does good with some, right? We know that the British had a tenuous relationship with the Romans. We know that because of just Romans were, for all their culture and stuff, they were actually very, very, very sexist. Their idea of, we're gonna skelly. Their idea of, maybe. Yep. Skelly. And I'm guessing starboard side. Yep. Let's do this. That is a weird spawn. That's super weird. He spawned up and turned. That almost never. Odd day. You want to take on the Skelly or do you want to?
It's whatever you want.
Oh, we can keep on. Did he just
You're the
sink?
captain.
He just sank.
No, it's just the wave.
No, I heard him. Look, they don't go down like that. I heard him come up, and I heard the ship sunk. We didn't shoot him though, so I don't know if we're gonna get any treasure. Look how slowly he's going down. They always go down way faster. And there's like a it looks like a Pirates of the Caribbean one. Like literally
Did it glitch and just go away?
it just well that was the thing, is it didn't really just go away. It came up, attacked us, turned around, and then made the dome.
Did it attack us?
It tried and it just turned. Like it didn't, I don't know, it killed itself. Or did it?
Did we get
So that is the. It's not even just a Christian thing, but if you believe in some higher power, of course, that's your reality, right? If that's how you view the world, that's what you're.
Oh, and there's
we're
our
like,
storm.
What? And I don't think we're gonna get. Oh wow! No way!
Well, you know, we've lost
Alright.
treasure.
Jesus, take the wheel, cause you're making us a lot of gold.
I did not
That
expect that.
is awesome. Well, thank you, Jesus. That's like incredible. I didn't expect that. I've actually never seen. This is like, yeah, it's either luck or something else, right? Anyway, so the point is that this Patrick guy, he finds Christ more of when he even writes that he wasn't like, he thought, actually, he writes that he thought priests were stupid and just, you're believing in something that there's no proof for. That sort of idea. That was his mentality about Christianity before he became an Irish slave. Now, afterwards, you could say desperation is what pushes him to believe in Christ. Him living out in the wilderness, being literally man versus beast, essentially, is what pushes him to believe in God. Now, of course, science is going to say, well, that's what always pushes us, and there is truth to that. And that really wouldn't be the question, is it? The real question is there any God, not just Christian God, any God? And is science, when they use evolution, explaining it away, or are we just figuring out how he or they or she done it? Right? That's the big. I don't want to turn the light on. Big conundrum there. We know that we can actually. I've looked at the science. It's actually pretty cool that the Big Bang Theory, the Big Bang did happen. It's just simple math that everything has to come from something because it starts to narrow down as you farther go back in geology. We can see it with our own haplogroups, right? Even if you want to use evolution, it doesn't stop the fact that all life has to start somewhere. And of course, all matter. That's the next one, not just life. All matter, all of everything that we know as existence starts somewhere. And of course, that the idea is that if it starts, something has to. And this is actually not even a Western idea. I don't remember what the theory's called, but it's an Eastern idea from Eastern mythology. From what I'm talking about, I don't think it's Islam. I think it's Islamic. Or it's Muslim. And the idea is that if it starts, it has to have a creator. That doesn't mean that a creator has to start. It just means that if it starts, it has to have a creator. So like I said, that's not actually a Christian theory, but it is an interesting scientific one. They've been doing science way before, Europeans. I mean, we're starting to look in our own. Believe it or not, we haven't done actually a lot of archaeology in like Britain and stuff. A lot of it melts and goes away. That is another player, for sure. A lot of it melts
Is that
and
a
goes
player?
away. Yeah, right over there. Just saw us pick up all that treasure. So. I think we're gonna have some empty
Is it that level 3 Reaper?
No. We're headed towards that guy. No, he's over. Right over there. Where's that Reaper? Particularly. Oh, okay, we're good.
The Sunken Grove.
Just need to see where we're at. We take this nice and steady. We won't bother too much. No, that guy. It looks like he's definitely coming after us too. Interesting. Yep, and he knows knows how to use the sail. He's flying an emissary, and he's got an alliance flag up, because we can see those two little things up top. The alcoholic, the legendary feared alcoholic, Captain Tadley. Love that. 420. Wow, that's awesome.
He
That
does
is a
have an alliance
person
flag
who
up?
is just very honest about themselves, right there. Of course, I could also say all kinds of negative things about that, but again, this is perspective. So basically, what it comes down to with beliefs and stuff, it's really all about like human brain and our own concepts. That's obviously what. Yeah, alliance flag. Wow, you're looking. She's really honest today. Look at me. I'm all over the place. Usually I'm the one who's. I'm pretty sure as he gets closer, we'll find out. He is an Athena. And he's a pirate lord, or legend, because you have to be a pirate legend. Those are called the ghost sails. So he knows he's got some money, right? He knows how to fight, is what that means, because that's the way you get money in this game. Or you just do a crap ton of fishing. Anyways, so Patrick does escape. He escapes with this long, amazing tale of how God came to him and said, "Okay, I'm getting you out of here." And I would like to point out that God never shows up in that tale, like doesn't show up in physical form. It's not like Paul or any of the other Christian tales. They're not all like that either, by the way. There's only a few. He doesn't hear an actual voice. It's more like someone in his head, or as Christians say, it's like that, what they call the voice of the Lord. But which, to me, honestly, if I wasn't Christian, I'd be like, that sounds insane. You all sound crazy. This is what makes people nervous, right here. But I'm also like, well, you know, we all talk to each other too, though. So, and who's to say humans aren't all a little nutty, right? And then if I've got a good friend, Wagon Daddy, who used to be a bar bouncer, he'd be like, yeah, no, we're all a little nutty. That's just being human in a weird way. This actually might be a good fishing area. I know I didn't outrun the guy because we don't have our sails tacked perfectly the whole time. Maybe if he wants to come check us out, I think I might actually just pop a squat on the other side of this island. Here. Always just turn around because all our other gold stuff is in the other direction. So let's take a chance, and we're gonna go see if this guy's cool. I think he's gonna be cool. He's got an alliance flag thing going up, and he's got all this other stuff. You never know that. That's gonna have the fun in this game. It's one thing because there's unfortunately what it's been is people have gone to the extreme. Kind of like we were talking about. Remember how I was talking about how people aren't, we do overboard too much, right? It's the same problem in this game. Just humans. If we just got rid of humans altogether, the world would be a better place. It's also horribly wrong at the same time. Conundrums. Anyway, so Patrick escapes. He goes runs away from his slaver, who's a chief, or the head of multiple family groups, or the head of a family, chief of a clan. Otherwise, a clan or a clown. Clown is it's just a word for family, believe it or not. So I know a lot of people, like, you see these video games where they're like the World of Warcraft game, but the Bloodhoof clan would be the Bloodhoof family. And that's a word thrown around about that actually comes from a specific culture that does spread from Scotland to Ireland, but that word, and they have a similar word in Wales, and what's left of the Celtic cultures is not that many left, believe it or not, but they'll have similar words, and they have their own mythology stories that actually already explain how they've been intermingling already. So it's kind of very interesting. It's one of my favorites from the Nine Invasions. Talks about how the northern Spain, where we have a very different looking kind of Spanish person, who doesn't have, like, they have dark hair, but they don't have all dark skin, right? They look way more what we would call with our really hate terms like this, but white. We'd call them white. I wouldn't, not a big fan of that. It's just a skin color. Doesn't mean anything about genetics or family. It's just, it's an easy thrown out term. I'm not gonna get into that because I could go on a stupid rant like for hours. But anyways, I'm already on a stupid rant, so just gotta pick one, right? So they've got all kinds of stories intermixing, right? So he leaves with these Irish traders. He gets down to the Dublin area. Leaves with the Irish traders. Is one of the few ports they have in Ireland, like bigger ports, not major. There's not a major port yet. And they are trading, and Ireland was trading all over the place, by the way, at that time. They're trading. They're what we call Scottish deerhounds today, are actually Irish wolfhounds from that year, those yesterdays, those yesteryears. So. Just gotta turn it on the video here. That should do it. So they go down to Gaul, or France area. It's actually probably likely they're landing somewhere near Normandy, you know, small Britain area. Britannia, I think like Lesser Britannia or Greater. I think it's, yeah, Greater Britannia, because Lesser Britannia is actually Britain. It sounds weird, but it's just how they mapped it. It has nothing to do with like bigger or something. It's a different thing. Oh, cool. Let's go. Is Smuggler Bay one of them? For sure. Right. Okay. He's there. Let's go all the way over to Crescent Isle. I'm gonna just head straight west. Where's our wind? Okay, so if I actually go, the wind is with us, so we're actually gonna switch over to Smuggler's Bay. Because the wind is with us, here's some sailing tips, guys. Because the wind is with us, I'm going to let it give us the direction of what we need to do, because I don't care as much right now because we're all over the place. I care more about getting there quickly than I do about a straight line. Believe it or not, if you're a sailor, you know that sailing is not really done in straight lines. It has more to do with staying wind in your sails and getting there quickly, because that's the one thing you can't control. It's pushing us all over the place. We're going against the ocean, meaning if you look over here, see how the waves are coming at me? They roll up and come down. So I'm going slower because I'm actually sailing against the current of, or the perceived current of the fake ocean that we're on. They did a really good job on this. I do wish there was an actual current, like if you dropped a rowboat in the water, it should actually move somewhere because of the current. But, you know, hey, that would also mean you lose treasure way easier, so maybe I shouldn't play that too much. Already have a bit of a problem with that there in the Devil's Roar. Lost and found so many treasure boats. Like, earthquake happens, and you're like, where did the rowboat go? So anyway, so Patrick essentially goes back. He goes to school after he saves these guys, because what had happened before Patrick got there that the Irish didn't know is that the what Rome calls barbarians, today we just call them Germanic people. It's so bad, man. Just some of the descriptions, I'm just like, wow, they're the educated ones, really? Oh, I'm not convinced that this is a good idea. You know, I'm a bit of a pragmatist in some ways. Dash of pragmatism, realism, fantasy, and a bit of an over-optimistic view on life with a pessimist's ability to freak out. So, basically what they didn't know is that the Germans had gone on the Rhine and been fighting and defeated the Romans, so they've wiped out the towns that were there. There's nowhere to really dock and get food. There's nowhere to really... Interesting. That, I guarantee you, is from that other guy. He must be here. Yes, we're slow. Okay. I think I'll go on the other side. I have parked in the middle before. If you've got a small boat, you can actually park it behind those rocks. But since I actually think somebody's here, I don't really want to go inside so much. Because you're trapped in there, and then it's literally a duke out inside that, and you're very little room to fight. Always, when fighting, doesn't matter if you're in a boat with a gun, doesn't matter with hand to hand, doesn't matter. I actually did some training in that. Always want to have room to fight. Do not back yourself into a corner, you'll regret it. I got myself knocked out that way when I got in a fight with a kid in 5th grade. Beat my head into the stone. We were friends. We still are friends today. He just, unfortunately, he had a hard time at home, and that's how he reacted. He ended up killing himself. So that's just a super sad story. And there's the, oh my gosh, there's the sadness in that. But it is unfortunately how sometimes. Anyways, so they get there and there's like no food, right? This is with Patrick, and Patrick says that he prays to God and that he's like, you gotta believe. If you believe that this guy can save you, he will. And they're like, okay, that we believe. Because they were kind of insulting to him. So they're kind of a little bit already on the back pedal, trying to not officially, they've already officially apologized, and they're not trying to go too crazy apology. Believe it or not, in those days, the Irish custom, and this is customs change, but the people don't, the customs change. The heart of people don't, but the customs do change, right? The custom back then for the Irish was to suck the other guy's nipple. So if you had done something wrong, you were to suck his nipple to apologize. So obviously today we're like, what? Right? That's weird. And since I think someone's here, I'm gonna try to keep it here. Let's see. You'll need a clue. Grantley, seek the bell at the wooden ruins to the east beach and solve the shanty.
Somebody's here?
Well, I see, yeah, because I see in the fire somebody lit a thing right there. See that? That guy who is up here probably lit that. It's a green flame, which means he's got killed by skellies, right?
Interesting.
Right, and we know that guy was actually headed in this direction. So it's likely probably him. Now, it doesn't mean he actually is doing PvP. You know what I mean? It just means that
Right.
he's like, oh, cool, and lit that. Or it means he's like, I'm really into PvP. I don't think he was chasing us for that reason, for PvP. Let's see here. You never know. So I'm going to stay on the boat and do my fishing. There is, up in that wooden area, you'll find... would you like my app on my phone, or are you just going to...
I'm good.
She's got
Is there something that I need over there?
No, just up in that area where the wooden shack was that one time, you'll find the bell up there in that area. I'll let you do it, though. I'll get back to my...
Oh, where that green light
You
is?
know what? I'm just going to take my nose out of your business. She's over
I'm
right
just
now.
interested in Patrick.
She's actually writing this down in a calendar right now. She's like, finally, he just sticks
Finally,
out.
he let
at
me do my thing.
I'm kind of bad in that way. Anyway, so what happens in the story that St. Patrick tells is that as soon as he does that, there comes a horde of torque. You're like, what? A horde of torque, or a horde of pigs. A big thing of pigs comes running through. Wild boar. Now, so torque, the word torque is also something that run around on their necks. They wear on their necks. The Celtic people didn't use crowns. I don't know, they just didn't. It was just, hats were not as cool, I guess. But a jewelry around your neck that's welded, twisted wire that you actually have to use your muscles to get on and off, that's cool. A crown, not as hard to get on and off. It's got to have a challenge. So, anyway, so I'm guessing, I don't really know why they did it that way, but they do. That's just what they came up with. But it's called a torque, and so is also an old boar, an old battle boar, one that's hard to kill, that'll take down a couple of hunters before it dies. So, because of that, 1, 2, 3, and we'll find out what is the best bait for here. I could Google it, or I could just do it this way. If you're not interested in reading as much about fish like I am, you can either have a crew, like I do, that is smart in that way, and apologize when you're a jerk. You say things you don't mean. Or you could just do what I'm doing and grab each kind of bait and see what happens. Or you could do what I really do and have both. Anyways, so of course it's a representation in the story. It has this representation of like the heart. He's giving them the heart of their people, that strength that they view as valuable even until old age, which is a little bit different than what we see with some of the Scandinavian, Germanic kind of people. Which is not, I mean, that's not. They're very two different cultures. We can actually see that from the Bellbeaker people who came from the more Germanic origins above the steppes versus the what we call the Celtic people, or the Celtic cultures that come from the steppes, which are today's, a part of today's Europeans. Like I said, a part, like, there's a lot of parts, trust me, like we're finding out, or we've known for a while, but it's really more like it's hitting the newspapers finally for some reason, even though it's been like 30 years, is that Neanderthals interbred into us. And of course there's all kinds of other 4 different kind of humans that we know of, that have interbred into what we know as humans today. So human sapiens aren't really human sapiens. We've never been purebred. And that has to do with, we like to have sex way more than we like to stay having our kids look the same as us. Which is cool, because that means, in a weird way, that sex will always overbeat racism. How awesome is that, folks? Is that kind of hatred will always be beaten by just our simple, man, she looks good in those shorts. But I think that's a wonderful thing, because it makes it an easy way to get along with people. Obviously, there are people who can go against that, or it gets twisted. Hitler, the rumor is that the woman he loved was Jewish. She wasn't actually. Believe it or not, his aunt was Jewish, making his mom's Jewish, part Jew, not fully. So it was actually kind of, anyways, like I said, he's obviously Hitler had issues, and it's very clear, right? And you don't need to be a history buff to know that. I mean, his name is referenced when we do anything horrid or just like, abhorrent today, right? People will use it, and it's kind of funny because his name, which is, it's not a bad, the actual name, Adolf, isn't a bad name. It has nothing to do with that. And the last name, Hitler, or Hitler, is not necessarily like a bad family altogether, right? It's just that single guy ruins it for everybody. And today, obviously, we see it in politics, where drama here in America sometimes, where, the real reality TV show, I like to call it, with our governments, politics, sometimes they throw around that name, if you're done something and say, oh my gosh, that idea is horrible. Well, no, it's not reality yet. Let's relax a little bit, stop trying to keep your job so much, and why don't you just do your job, that kind of thing. But again, so anyways, so the symbolism, the Pete guys get fed, and he goes to school. So one of the interesting things, he goes to school in a monastery and stuff, or a college, essentially, a biblical college, which started a lot of colleges today, Harvard, Princeton, Oxford, a lot of those guys, maybe not Princeton, but I know Harvard, Oxford, a lot of the ones that we consider like the creme de la creme today are actually started a long, long time ago, especially the ones in the UK, obviously. Out of like literally ministry school. So if you go out like myself, if you go to a Bible college online, that would be the equivalent of what he was going to. He was going to a college too, but it wasn't in Rome. He wasn't going to the Oxfords of the day. But they later, always those, if they stick around, those is just more to do with time and money. Those things will end up, if it lucks with them and all that, they'll end up being those prestige colleges. Is just do with it. Sometimes you just gotta outlive people to beat them. That's literally how we, as humans, do it. Believe it or not, some of the greatest kings or people that we are written down as great kings, not necessarily they were good people, but if they were written down as kings, just outlived people. That was their plan, and it does work. Or it can work. Not always, but it can work. There we go. Nice, man. I got a trophy one, it looks like. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, he goes, he learns, and one of the does things that is actually kind of important that happens there that shows the difference of the two styles that we have of Christianity today. I know we have all these things that if you're not Christian, say it's a denomination, you're like, what does that mean? You're like, oh, they just believe Christianity a little differently, and then it gets really mucky as soup. Believe it or not, a lot of the Christians, like as we go to our conferences and stuff, the people who are priests or preachers and ministers in church, we're trying to get away from that as much because it has made it so confusing and just we think there should be more working together and blending together again versus what it obviously went into. And believe it or not, some of the denominations or some of the beliefs in Christianity or belief types were literally started just because some king wanted to get married one more time. That doesn't mean that it's like a bad or stupid faith or anything. It just means that how it started was a bit silly. I'm talking about Anglicanism. I actually went to an Episcopal, or was when I was a kid. I'm not particularly just one side now. I call myself just a Christian. But the idea is that with Henry VIII, that's how Anglicanism, or Angle, or English, the English Church, that's why it's called different from what we would know as English today. It's how the English language developed is like super complicated. The story's great, especially if you can make it into like TV and stuff. It would actually be a pretty cool TV show. We see that with what was it called, The Last Saxon or The Last King or something. It talks about the last king of Saxony, which is one of the types of the Germanic people who were hired to defeat the Cymry, not the Cymry, but hired to defeat the Pictish or the people of Fortri, Caledonia, and the Scotty or the Dalriada Irish or Dalrita Irish. That's actually how Saxons and English came in there, and that's also important because we got to remember that where Patrick's going has like many different. It's like a miniature America, and that's why America runs the way it does. Is because we're still trying to use some of the rules that worked. They're not perfect, right? But we're like, I mean, help us invent some better ones. If you got some better ones that isn't all about condemning everybody and like working together, actually, let's do that. I think that's our forefathers believed in that. Believe it or not, that's one of the reasons why we have that law about guns, that we can have our own guns and our own militia, which was a thing. Believe it or not, back in Scotland used to have that, and they done away with it versus political beliefs that too many wars, essentially. Each family actually had their own that's why kilts were around. Each family had their own kilt color, and each kilt color told you whose army you were about to go face. So it was just a way of like having, like today we have different colored uniforms for our military in America. The same thing. So it was way more dramatic, and that wrap could be used as a tent, as a sleeping bag. You could use it as it was your gunny sack. A kilt was a multi-verse tool, and also kept you a little bit more aired out, right? That was the idea. Anyways, so now that we're imagining that he confesses a sin that we don't really know what it was, but it's a private confession to a friend of his.
Oh my god, that scared the shit out of me. Oh, crap out of me.
That's alright, that's fine. But basically the idea is that although we don't know what the sin is, we know that from writings that there are certain sins back then when Christianity started with the Europeans that they didn't consider like horribly bad if you were outside Roman influence in what we call Western Catholicism or Western European Christianity before it was kind of engulfed by Roman Catholics and then separated again into what we know the denominations today. Like I said, this is one of the reasons I was like, well, why don't we talk about this, because it seems super confusing. Is this our stuff?
Is that our ship right there?
Does it have a rowboat on it? Yeah, that's our ship. for sure.
Okay. Oh, there you are.
I'm like looking at hers, and there's the sun's going down, so it looks all funky. It's really hard to tell the color. And I'm like, looking at her screen, looking at mine. I think. Wow, look at this, man. Oh.
This is just Comey the Alien. I haven't even found the clue yet.
Oh wow. Oh, there's another robo. Oh, it's another one.
It's the same as ours. I think it's just a lantern.
Okay. Did you got any storage crates?
Uh,
No. But
No,
well,
there's
we
a
have the
fruit
old
crate, though.
school storage crates. Yeah, that's cool. That works. That works. Right on. This is why I like when I go fishing. I'm not going to be automatically engaging in fights, right? So that's why we don't buy storage crates and all the other one. And that's why it's nice to have the two different options, because if you really are going to go into battle like we did yesterday, you buy all the stuff beforehand. So there's plenty of don't kill me. Plenty of cannons and stuff to actually fight. Alright. Oh man, I wish I had switched back to the pistol. Our fight yesterday with the guy, I'm pretty sure was using mouse and keyboard hooked up to his Xbox, which you can do, and it makes you way better. But it does make it harder to get into Xbox matches, Xbox controller matches only. But that's why if you're on all you have to do really is just run the regular Xbox controller. Ooh, almost missed that. Anyway, so what we know about Patrick, and this tells us about the man, is that there was an old sin he'd done before. He's probably getting towards his middle aged at this point, you guys. So, because he was like 27, I think, or around there when he left, or mid 20s when he left Ireland the first time. So he goes to school and he's coming back now, and he's one of the older guys to go into school. So if you like St. Patrick and you're going back to school and you're nervous, just know he was the same way. So, had the same kind of fears, believe it or not. He was afraid because he wasn't really great at Latin. He didn't quite understand that language as well, because obviously it comes from a separate, different kind of thinking from the Cymry thinking. So it's for him, it was like, I don't do good with English. I do better with Spanish and languages that are set up differently linguistically when we write them down. It makes more sense in my head. I kind of think that way. So, but English, I'm dyslexic in it, and I'm just like, to me, I'm like, why do you need 3 different words? Can't people figure out when I'm talking about a person over there, and I said sit there, and theirs is there, all those different ones. So that, for me, I'm like, other languages, it's the same word. It's not spelled differently. It's just referenced to what you're talking about. They expect you, like Spanish, they expect you to have a brain in your skull and to use it. That's not necessarily meaning that English works different. We've got to remember that English actually was written, one of the reasons why we have so many different English or English, not either English derived or changed to English family names that are spelled differently is because Webster wasn't there at the start of the English language, right? He comes Webster from the Webster Dictionary, who said we should all have a certain way of writing things down. He comes way later. So anyway, so that's some of the muddling of English, is it's got so many different languages, and obviously thank you for Webster, because he's the one who's like, we gotta fix this. It's way too confusing, and nobody can just spell it however they want. Plus, I want to get a little comeuppance off of it too. Maybe, I don't know. That's the way he's written in Blackadder. It's actually pretty funny. I would recommend it with Rowan Atkinson. It's hilarious. The guy who plays Baldric also does gorgeous, amazing TV shows and exploring Scotland and England and all over. He loves to hike. He's very much honestly, he's like a real life Captain Picard in his interests, in the avenues of his interests. They're very much like the Captain Picard from Star Trek, where He's into archaeology and history, and he has a knowledge of it that he can actually sit there and discuss and debate a bit with the professionals, which really shows you that he knows what he's talking about, and it gives us that glimpse, that insight, kind of, I guess, a little bit similar to what I'm doing, other than I've never been over there. I've always wanted to work over there and live over there. I mean, George Mueller is a huge, I'm a huge fan of George Mueller. If you're British and you know some history, you probably know what I'm talking about. If you're American, George Mueller is just a famous priest from Prussia or Germany area that went over and was a priest and did orphanages in Britain, and he actually started a lot of orphanages and things that help people all over the world today with money and finances and food, that sort of thing. And they still don't actually go begging for money. They wait for it to come today to them just based off of them being good people. So their reputation of being good people is what earns them money to be good people, which is, wow, that's a novelty idea, right? Anyways, but if you remember, and if I'm not speaking too fast, I actually pointed out that was the basis of Christianity, or the idea in the first place. And even if you don't believe in God, I still think being a good person should help motivate being a good person in general. It is its own reward, right? Don't get me wrong. I like money too, because I don't want to lose my house, right? We've had a little hard time recently, so it's, you gotta have food. That's important, right? I like hot baths because cold baths are not fun, right? You get the idea. Anyways, so back to my rambling points off that rabbit trail, back onto the main course, the main track. Where were we? We were with figuring out what weird sin that is done in a different way than the Roman Catholics do it, or the school had done it with St. Patrick and his friends. So St. Patrick confesses a sin, and we figure a lot of students, as well as professors and things today, people a part of studying these sort of things, believe that he probably murdered somebody, right? And you're thinking like, wait, what? Okay, let me explain, right? That it's just something, right? He didn't get in big trouble, right? Oh, he felt bad, but here's the idea, is that, so back then, even up to the times of like Henry VIII and stuff, and a little bit today for the rich people, but it was way more common back then. It was not as much of a big deal to like lie or to cheat on your wife. You got to remember that they're coming out of this culture where you had a year and a day to test out your marriage, and if it didn't work, you could call it quits and go find somebody else to hook up with, right? And that sounds kind of good, but it also causes a lot of jealousy and a lot of emotional issues left unsolved, and that causes war. And then all of a sudden you're getting your buddies and you're getting your family army, and well, he said, she said. You can see how that could go wrong. Not that we need help with that. That's already going to go wrong. You know what I mean? Humans, somebody's going to ruin it for the rest of us. It still kind of exists. That's a gorgeous island.
Did you get all that treasure?
Oh, I can start harpooning it instead of talking my butt off. So the idea is I think I'm just gonna roll it over there today. Why not? I love rolling. Anyways, so the reason is because for his class and his station and his attitude before, right? So psychologists have looked at this a little bit. Is the idea is that for Patrick, stealing money wouldn't have been as big a deal for his father's station. Even murdering a servant, or what we'd call a slave today, would not, like, they were less than human, right? Not as equal in Roman eyes to the rest of everybody. And that's, of course, what we know as slavery as Americans versus, like, Greek and stuff. So it was, it wouldn't have been as a big deal. He wouldn't have gotten in trouble, and it wouldn't have bothered him for like stealing. Even if he would have had to like robbed a bank equivalent, millions of dollars for it to even be a big deal, or even a blip on the radar with his father's status as a noble. So that's kind of where it was like a man who has this huge heart change and goes from thinking priests are silly people to being one of them is very, very different. So it has to be something more than just a little lie or something, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you're forgiven, it's over. So it's got to be something that caused massive grief, and they're thinking, because he gets teased about it later. Later, when Roman Catholic meets Western Catholicism, there's a bit of a word war. They write nasty letters back and forth. Not necessarily Patrick, but some of the people who kind of followed in his footsteps, and versus the Pope and stuff. And not all the popes were strictly just religious. I mean, like as Patrick and other ones, like the Europeans were kind of learning how do you follow this Hebrew religion back in those days, right? And that, you know, we're getting. I would hope to think we're honing into something that's better, helps people become better, right? That's the idea, and is that we're supposed to be coding. Not that it's better for the world. Not that we're not here to control and dominate. That's not the idea. That's exactly the opposite of what we need to do. But that we can show that it's better, you know. Could say at least for some of us, but I mean, I would like to think all of us. That's just my stupid opinion, though. But basically, so why that's important is because it shows that he has a heart change, that he actually isn't just some yokel on a soapbox back then making money, like we have people on TV or something who use religion to steal. And that's, I mean, there's been con artists since the days forever, and that, believe it or not, they've had that way before the Hebrews, before Christianity. They just called them false prophets. That's actually what their name, they would call them, are false seers. Same thing with very similar when it comes to like the Greeks and stuff. It would be like, you know, they wouldn't take that philosophical guy seriously like they would take Socrates or even, you know, Homer and stuff. So it's that idea of somebody using belief for their own gains versus everybody else has been around forever. That's not new. I know, I hate to say it, Christians don't have a monopoly on that. I'm sorry, we really tried. No, I'm kidding. So basically what we found out, is a little bit after that time, after he pretty much finishes school, he's about to finish, he's pretty much done, he gets this dream where all of Ireland calls him back that we need your help, you know, our culture's in the decline, it's no longer this powerhouse it once was, we need your, you know, there's a lot of poor and starving, we need your help. And that's because the trade routes of Rome broke down, right? They can no longer trade with the mainland of Europe like they used to. So there's a very real thing that we can really point to on why they're having such a tough time and why they might have a heart change and why it would make sense, like why it might be even in a dream, whether it was a vision or not, why it would be there with Patrick, right? So what I'm saying is there's reason to this. It's not just made up out of nowhere. We can look at it and go, okay, yeah, I can see that might be a real thing. Okay, I can buy that Patrick's not just a outright liar and charlatan, that kind of thing. Anyways, so he goes over there, and what basically within just his lifetime, just like the last, I think it's like 20 years or 30 years he was there, he stamps out most of the wars. It gets to the point where he helps the people through showing them a better way. Like, we don't have to avenge every wrong. We don't have to show that true strength comes from deciding to be above or to take that higher road, is what we call it today, right? So that's something like, sounds weird, but that was not an idea everybody had. That's not a world idea. That is an idea that comes and goes. And when things get tough, usually the idea of I'd rather be a wolf than a sheep starts to come about, right? Are we noticing a similarity for today? Are we noticing that as our economy starts to get tough and as people are starting to, right, things are stressful these days. Like, everybody can see it. It's not like, even Britain and stuff. I talked to friends in Australia, or a semi-acquaintance, Rocket, like from Britain. Talked to him. Unfortunately, I didn't get to get on his Among Us today. I was doing this. and going to church. So it's hard for me to get stuff on Sundays. But the idea basically is though is like it's not just Americans. Like the world's noticing it. It's on a brink again. We're all intertwined, like a ecosystem, right? With our trading and stuff, we help each other all over the world. Believe it or not, a lot of the fresh fruits for UK actually come from Israel. So you can see in that example that we make our own ecosystem, like we call it. I mean, it's our idea anyways. The word and what it is something that we've observed. It's in nature, but why would we not? We're part of nature in some ways, so why would we not do the same thing? Right, duh, kind of, right, idea. Anyway, so they're having a hard time there. So he goes back, and he like he said, he gets rid of, like, most of their battles and wars. Because you gotta remember, every family has its own army. They have their own warriors. We have our own tribes. My last name, Findlay, actually goes back to the last name Fionlach. And Fionlach is Scots Gaelic, or Northern Dalriada Irish derived, and it means fair warrior. It also actually might end up meaning, there's a new idea that it means like the hand of Lugh, or the warriors of Lugh, who's the an old god of Ireland, god of the light and stuff. But anyways, that's interesting and new, but it just has different roots. Why it might have changed from that. She's gorgeous. My wife, not the fish. She's gorgeous. Where did she go? Wow, she's quick. Like a ninja, that one. Look at her. She's on it already. Do you have something on the beach? Oh, haha, I see. Oh, man. These things are so... Wait for it. Returning. Man. It always shoots higher on these, so it's trying to get it to... Ooh, there it is. No, it might just bring us much too far away. We're not even hitting the rock, so we're not close enough. But I just have to bring it in just a smidge because we're almost there. I swear these things have their own reach at times. There's one. All right. Are we gonna hit anything? I think we'll be okay. So, as he goes back, like he stops that, they're starting to kind of change laws, and not a lot. It's not like they changed the whole idea. It's just that they actually took some of their old places. I know a lot of people are really upset that they think Christianity, like got rid of all their old religions and their old belief systems. Believe it or not, it actually wasn't them. Wholly, there was a law in Rome. This is before Christianity. That the idea was that if you wanted to be part of Rome, you had to actually accept the Roman gods as the main gods, but you could still worship yours. Just remember that the Roman gods are in charge, and that was just a way of making sure that you remember that Rome's in charge. And one of the things we can see the statues all over we have this in writing. It's just not some random guess. It's nothing to do with Christianity in that way. That is actually just Roman history. Is that Rome, you would have to have, if you built, they help you build statues to your gods, but you had to have a Latin name so that everybody would know who that is. And of course you'd want to do that because if everybody speaks Latin, it just helps with the communication, right? Unfortunately, because we don't have the writings, and there were writings from back then that got burned and stuff during a bit of a war between, you could say, like that war I was talking about, the war of words between Western Catholicism and Roman Catholicism. Not saying Roman Catholicism is bad or Western Catholicism is like the greatest or something like that. I'm just saying that there were brick burnings that happened at that time as people went from one belief system to another, and it was not just the hordes of people who got rid of that knowledge, but it was a very, very scary time because, like I said, it's not based upon just people being illiterate and stupid. No, it's based upon that the roads and trade routes aren't there, that food and stuff, that things that we're not familiar with, like starvation and things, were way more real. And if we would probably act the same if we got closer to that sort of idea of living once again. In fact, we can kind of see that in some of our modern history with how crime's gone up with less police and how just insanity with some of the stupid politics has happened. Similar things have happened where what it seemed like logical and sense reasoning people went to just stealing and breaking people's stuff, and you know, just insane, you know. And it's hard to really know who's really behind or what's really what sometimes with that, because if you're really smart, you don't flaunt the fact that you're there to rip down the United States, right? Or you don't flaunt the fact that when you're charging the capital that you have nothing to do with this guy or that guy or this or that, right? Otherwise you're getting in trouble. Why would you want to give people the person, right? So that way I haven't actually said anything. I'm not getting into politics like that. But just, you know, it's, yeah, we're not stupid. It's obvious that if you want to do something evil like that, you don't go around saying it was you who did it, right? Otherwise it's gonna, why would anybody want to follow you after that? It's all about getting humans to follow you. That's how real power is sustained. Anyways, so Patrick is over there. He's changed it. There's less fighting. He hasn't. And then interesting about the kind of the way he's done it, and which helps birth giving food and stuff that comes out of like that whole idea of Christmas, right? With the Scrooge and stuff. And the giving to the poor and all that, that's birthed with that. That is where it goes from just the Roman organization to the heart of, like, this guy, St. Patrick, or being nice to people for the sake of we need it sometimes. Is out of that desperation and stuff, we birth that. And that could be, right, third-party perspective, that could just be humans learning, and that's just how we are when some of us decide to help each other when things go bad. Or that could be, like I said, an actual the Christian belief religion, and you know, I don't want to get too mucky in there. I know people get upset with that, but either way, it's really cool that we can see how those two differ. So from what he starts is where you can have private confessions, where you can, it's not in front of everybody. You can, if you sin, you can be forgiven and just and you can work on learning not to do that bad habit, and instead of just getting excommunicated, which was a little bit more common back then before they started evolving Roman Catholics as in that Rome. I mean Roman Catholics, not like today's Roman Catholic spreads the world, right? That's a totally different. It's not just Romans who are Roman Catholic today, right? Because Romans don't exist, but the Roman Catholics do. If you see what I'm saying. So they have a little bit more lenient religion up there for a type of Christianity, and that's what starts a little bit more leniency in some other ways, and that actually is what starts the spreading of Megalodon. Yeah, for sure, Megalodon. I know my music. Come on, me, you wandering beast. There she is, nice and purple. I think I got this. Let's just check the map really quick, because I think. Where's that guy? Okay, so that was not the Reaper I saw. Just wanted to be sure. Oh. So basically, oh, she's a gorgeous one too. Plenty of meat on her. Come on. Sometimes you can hook them and they can drag your boat around like you. It'd be a little fun. It can get glitchy though. You gotta be careful. You either flow your boat in the air, or she'll drag you like 12 feet under the water, the whole boat. Not just like the top of that mast is 12 feet underwater. The rest of us are like way more, right? So you could say like what we understand is some of the basic rules of how like Protestant religions are. They kind of have their birthplace in Ireland with him, as after he dies, we see the springing of these monks and stuff who write stuff down, as they start to, as Picklin starts to go, I kind of like this Christianity too. The guy who brings that out, though, is actually a name in from Irish to English. Actually, I think it's like Red Fox, believe it or not, right? I know it sounds Native American. It's not. It's because, anyways, if we just look at non-Christian names today, they all kind of sound like that, believe it or not. When you go back to the root of what the root means, they're all going to be, that's just how humans, that's how our languages work. It's nothing to do with what, continent you're from. It does sound weird. It's just kind of how it is. It's not based off of like a belief system. It's just John, Paul, Peter. Bam.
Nice.
That was.
Nice save.
I know, thank you. I was trying to talk and teach and fire at the same time. Multiple things at once. See, women? Guys can multitask. I'm so happy. It doesn't mean I'm doing it all that well, though. It just means I can kind of make it work. Anyways, so this guy, I'm trying to remember. His actual name is Saint Columba, but his actual given name, I don't remember the Goiliga, the Irish version, but it means, if I remember right, is like red fox. And what they're talking about is that his hair was red, like a fox's. They think. Ooh, that's not gonna work. That way I don't go flying off the boat. So.
There was like no damage.
Really?
I told you I
Oh,
had
there's just a
damage.
single hole. Sorry. You did. I'm so used to being a loner and a loser.
Being working by yourself and not a good team with your wife.
Wow, that's another way to say it. I was preferring the loser version of what I said. But, no, I don't know, maybe because I soloed by myself. She got me. Look at her. Smiling over there. If you can see that on camera, she's totally teasing me. Which also refers to something earlier we were talking about. If you don't like a challenge, don't get into a relationship. I'm not just talking about marriage, man. Women have some of the best comebacks I've ever heard or seen. I'm not even kidding. You think guys are kind of mean? Man, women can be vicious. Hilarious, but vicious. Tough. Like iron sharpening iron. I really wish they had harpoons on this that you could throw. Like, I mean, that's cool that you could shoot it, but like an actual harpoon. I would love to see Rare for an addition to this. That'd be really cool. It's kind of like a Captain Ahab version, where you've got, maybe not whaling, because that's a sensitive subject, right? But Megalodons aren't a sensitive subject. See? She just killed that with a pistol. Not a sensitive subject. Right there. Point in fact. I'm a carpenter, and I professionally would say that's nailed. She nailed it. Alright, I'm done with the dad jokes. Well, at least for now. Anyway, so this Red Fox guy, he starts, once it starts to spread, with believe it or not, the Dalriada are the Northern Irish from, I don't remember if it's the family Uli or Ulfi, but they are, my personal belief, I think they're just trying to expand their territories, resources to shoot for Tara once again, and the County Meath in order to be, not county, but the province of Meath, which is in, Meath County is a part of that old province. There it is.
Northeast.
I sees it. To go for the to Audrey, right? The High King again. So that's politics. But with them, they're spreading in this new religion from there, with the Book of Kells and stuff, and on the Isle of Man, this new Christianity from Patrick. So, and it meets this Roman Catholicism that is old school Rome. It's stayed there from the early beginnings of Christianity, and it's not the same as the one that we see at that same period that's in Rome. You got to remember, they're not really talking to each other, right? Things have gone dark. It's like what would happen if we lost the internet today. The same thing. We would still have some sort of common information and beliefs, but if we stay longer without this core of being able to communicate, that common belief is going to diverge on its own from our own cultures, or well, another way to say cultures is how we all think. Our own ways of thinking will separate that. So that's basically what's going on. So they're getting along, and that's spreading, and they're there's because they weren't persecuted, they kind of want to be included. These Irish and these Northern Irish and these Southern Irish and all these Cymry that are they're actually like getting along. Nobody's enslaving each other's like it was. You know, like it's way calmed down. It's way more peaceful. It's one of the reasons they actually went from being some of the best sword fighters and spear fighters in those territories to being like, you know, wanting to go live out on the land with these monks and everybody. Believe it or not, people are, you know, you could get these old texts that have all this old knowledge of. Here's the important part: why it's called "How the Irish Saved the Modern World." These old texts that were taken during the time of book burning, they were taken where? From Egypt and Alexandria and places like that, Rome, all the way up to Ireland. A podunk place, it would be kind of the View. Not that it was, but the View is this podunk barbarian tribes of people who are writing down and copying these books. They're saving them. They're making a compendium of them, and they're like that's why we have that wonderful Book of Kells. That is a translation of the Bible, and we also have many of other old Irish books that were before the Vikings came and kind of they hid them. They find them in like ditches today. I'm not even kidding. Like old ancient just books, and some of them are like literally just like the Iliad, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Some of them are just like things about Socrates. Some of them are of like Aristotle. You know, it talks about Leonardo, Donatello, and Michelangelo. You know what I'm talking about, right? All those Lolos. I'm kidding. That was a stupid bunch. That was an attempt of poor humor. It wasn't funny. But you understand what I'm saying. All those old guys that we know that invented these smart ideas that we're supposed to learn and that we actually use them and they're useful, but we don't really give them as much credit today. Unless we're trying to impress a very cute girl, you know, then all of a sudden we're like, yeah, so, you know, well, Michelangelo's work on the Sistine Chapel was just, on the 16th chapel was just brilliant, you know. It took him 16 times to get it right. You know, silly stuff like that. But, or you might be actually somebody who's well educated and you know it's the Sistine Chapel and you know you've been there and you've seen it and you can tell her all about the different pastels and the different materials like egg yolk and things that it was used to an eggshell, not egg yolk, eggshell, crushed up and turned powder, and that's what makes the color vibrant and all yada yada stuff like that. Depending on how you like to convince the other sex that you're not adults, right? That's really the point of that. Anyways, so they're saving all that, and that's actually how the Irish saved modern civilization, is simply by going from combat and war main tribes with like the famous tale of Cuchulainn or Finn McCool and all that, but to these scribes who were like calling themselves the Green Martyrs or White Martyrs. The Green Martyrs would go out and living off the land and just the land. They believed that their God would he would keep them alive and stuff. And so that's where we get like these ideas of monks, you know, and hermits. Believe it or not, the word hermit, and the idea of a hermit comes from that. So. And people actually used to go out and seek these guys. So it sounds crazy because like we don't do that today, unless we're going to like a Buddhist temple in Japan or something. You know, that's something that the East does way more these days for us. Still, we don't really have our treks back to. I think the closest you might get for Americans would be like if you're going to go visit where your family was from Scotland, Wales, England, France, Germany, or you know what I mean? We're going to have a trek back and try to get in touch with our roots or something deeper or something bigger than ourselves, you know. That's we kind of do that today. That's what we're doing right here, I believe. So that would be, I think, the closest we'd have to what the people were doing with these Green Martyrs. Now, the Green Martyrs went to White Martyrs, and that was people, believe it or not, it started with this Red Fox guy, St. Columba, our buddy, and believe it or not, when this guy showed up, he was actually what we call a warrior priest. He was from the warrior caste, so he's a family of royalty or nobility. So with the Irish, if you're noble, you're also royal, because it doesn't, like, they didn't hand it down. Or, well, the Cymry the same, the Fortri, the Pictish people, they're the same with them. It's, you're not just in charge because your dad was in charge. So royalty was anybody who had come from these families who had proven that they were handing down knowledge and stuff that was going to keep the rest of us alive. So it's like a resume in that way, not just because God ordained you to be in charge. That's not something they were buying into, which are kind of like, wait, what? Oh, these guys actually sound... if they're backwater, why do they sound so smart? I don't know. I don't know. I have no... It sounds reasonable. It sounds for sure. And obviously, Patrick convinced them to not kill each other, and they went from being really, really good at combat, like the movie Troy, if you've seen that, where the spear combat, that is exactly what would have been happening too with Cuchulainn versus his best friend when they're duking it out for the Great Brown Bull of Cooley, which is pretty cool. That later fought it with Finnebruch. And if you don't know Irish history or Irish lore, it's not history but lore, then yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about, and you're like, well, these are weird foreign names. Well, if you just go check out the word game Smite, you'll get they have some of the Irish stuff in there. She's got it. Look at that. That's hot. That gives you an idea. Of some of that mythology. If you're into it, like, I'm not saying you have to go be a nerd and read it up like I do, but you can at least go see how cool it would look like in a movie by how the combat looks like in the game. The game Smite. My favorite is the Morrigan. I also like Cernunnos. And there's also the fabled Cuchulainn, or the Hound of Cuchulainn, otherwise known as Shtanta, on there. So that's some kind of cool stuff. Anyways, back to St. Columba, because we're kind of done with Patrick for now. I can do an exclusive on Patrick some other time. And look at that, Glitterbeard. If you're looking for Glitterbeard journals, there's one here on Crescent Isle underneath the and this is a hard one to get. That you have to like find every single one of these journals. And if you do, you can get a glittering beard, which I don't have. I haven't found every single one yet. I have actually got trapped. Oh, it's just a big crate. That's okay. Anyways, so as they slowly do that, believe it or not, they... You know what? Nope. No, I'm not shooting that yet. Okay, where was that gunpowder? There it is. This is exactly why I get rid of these things sometimes. Okay. What is that? Okay, just glowing mushrooms. Glowing mushrooms. Anywho, so before the Viking army, and I want to make that very clear, the Viking army, I mean, there were some Vikings that came over and they started to hide these books and stuff. They actually built towers where there was like, you had a rope that somebody would have to let down to get up there. And yet, ooh, is this a cannon one? I saw her. Oh, did you get warped? Nice. This is actually one of my favorite places to fish and stuff. It's because that's the closest port. It's right there. So I can actually see, this is what we'd call a trade lane. We're right off the trade lane, and we're a bit off, so you can hide your boat behind. Look, you can't really see my boat here, so you have to actually go from the opposite side of the trade lane where people normally are to see it. So this is like, I love fishing off of here, and it's very easy to hide your boat. They have gold hoarder missions are here inside the temple. So I mean, and I've been playing this game for years. I'm fairly good at it. Like, I can kind of hold my own for PvP, but PvE, man, I can give you some great direction. But the idea is, ooh man, really, I wish I could fish off a stool. That'd be cool. But the idea is because that's the thing somebody's gonna want to go to. I just have to keep an eye out right there. And most people come through, see the arch there? They're coming from this there, that's Sanctuary. They're coming from right over here, so I don't have to worry about the north as much, and I don't have to worry about hardly at all, because we're on the edge of the map, of the west. So it's just the east, and the only thing sticking out right there, you can see, I neither found treasure. That's awesome. Right there.
What's over there?
Oh no, I was just showing that the only, like, you can hardly see our ship. You got to be really paying attention. All right, here we go. Let's see what we got. So, we don't have all these ratings. We do have some of them because of that, and we have some. There are a few famous historians, but it's why I'm actually kind of excited that we see the rise of agricultural digs inside Britain and stuff right now, because they're gonna find stuff, dude, that will change the way we look at it. They're starting to even say, we got to remember that, and I don't mean anything bad against English people or anything like that, but we got to remember that not everybody got along on those islands, and it was pretty much primary one culture that really dominated the history writing and the influence of history writing for those islands, and actually, believe it or not, in a weird way, a lot of the world, because that's where we get it from America, right? So everything they wrote down may not be true. So as they say, like the Irish didn't have their own language, or that written language in the ancient days, they may not be true. We're starting to see evidence that suggests or hints or has a possibility. Let me see that. That's way closer. Has a possibility that Ogham script was in fact given to them by a family of Danu. Today we'd call it the clan of Danu, or the Truada Danan. The Truada means tribe, which would be like a gathering of families of Danu, the goddess Danu. So I mean, they actually are named after a woman on that, which is really interesting. You'll see that very common early Irish mythology there. So. And what this, we might have some more of this interesting history in it as it's coming out. And these modern days, we're getting a lot of stuff that is, because believe it or not, Ireland is like literally just came out of being a third world country not that long ago. Same thing with Wales. Like, I know for us in America, it hasn't been that long, and some of us have been far separated that in families, right, the richer families, for much, much longer than that. But, I mean, we got to remember, it feels like we've been here in America established for a long time. It might feel like that because just how your family does things, or how, you know, Thanksgiving or Christmas, or how we do things. But you got to remember, it's not even been 300 years, which means it's not been that many generations, and especially for some. And I'm talking about just the founding of America, not the fact that, like, my great grandpa. His dad was not from America. I actually knew the guy. So, like, for me, it's a very real thing that, oh, you found a storage crate. And it's got fish in it. Oh my gosh, I love her. Look at that, cooking it up already. It's funny how people appreciate things. You can appreciate it when it's going good. The tough one is, can you do it when it's not going good? Well, nobody's got that down. Nobody. That's something that we're all working on, right? That's the idea, at least. Anyways, so, and obviously, yeah, I was a little cranky yesterday on my last stream, so I want to apologize to people if I offended anybody. I wasn't insulting too much, but I know I was not my normal, optimistic, lovely self. And my lovely wife pointed it out to me, and that's what wives are there for. They're not there to make your sandwich. They're there to point out when you're stupid and to help you become better, like I say here. Same thing with husbands. I know wives get a lot of credit for that, but husbands do the same thing, believe it or not. Dude, I swear there's a statue there, but I'm not seeing. I think I might go get that gunpowder keg, unless she broke it, if that's what that is. It was broken. Okay, so she must have done that, so I'll just bring that. That's my job right now, is to talk about this stuff. Anyways. As you can see, so as this Christianity spreads with the white ones, it literally spreading all over Europe at this point, with the invasion of the Viking army that pushes it out. Some of the languages is the written down stuff is in different, like, Irish languages and Cymry and like Latin, and like these aren't just these scripts. Believe it or not, they got them, some of them in the English Museum, which is awesome. See, these guys are saving this history for us. It's gorgeous. So there's no. I know some Americans families have this passed down. Irish American, even from northern or southern, have a bit of a grumpiness of passed down look, and even our history kind of sounds a little bit in America like the British are coming, which isn't actually accurate. It's the English are coming, but anyways, so the British would be like the Welsh. It was in the idea of what's left of the culture that didn't adapt, because believe it or not, a lot of the British people who we might call English are actually still British. They might have some Saxon in or Angle or Jute, but most of it's still going to be British. It was really the royalty that took over, not the entirety of the people. Anyways, that's what we can see with genetics. But I'm sure we're going to find out more and more to that story. That's not even exactly accurate either. That's usually how it goes, right? When detail chooses everything, and before you know it, your grandkids learning something different in history class than you did, and you're like, "This is why I liked math class," and then you find out that's changed too. What they think the way to know addition and subtraction is changed because of its importance. Anyways, that's just how we do things is always going to change. What we do may not, though. Anyways, so as that spreads, with that, believe it or not. It sounds odd, but because of that invasion, that also allowed these guys to spread across Europe. And what came back from the Protestant Orange during the Orange and Green fight, the original one, not the one in the 60s to the 30s, but I'm talking about the one 16 something, what we call the Jacobite rebellions with William of Orange. Anyways. He was a Protestant, and he's the one who brought more Protestantism to, and kind of towards that disagreement between some of the Highlander Scottish Catholics and the Irish versus that Protestant. Anyways, but those ideas, and some of them are actually more people have more comfortability with, right? Some people want it to be more private, which they do. Catholics do private confessions now too. So obviously they've been doing it for a long time because we're talking about history. But my point is Roman Catholicism was a little different, but the Irish had always done, like we've seen in history, I've been talking about, a little different too. So, but this, that helping, and believe it or not, even help, these guys would hunt. Like I said, the Red Fox guy, St. Columba, he was actually a warrior priest. He actually came with a war horse and a sword and his rook, that was a shepherd's staff. But that was the sign that you were also in a really weird haircut. I'll explain that in a minute. The sign that you were one of those Christian priests. It was a way of, like today we see the collar, right? It was a rook back then would tell people like, oh, okay, he's one of those guys. And you actually had some robes that were kind of like shepherds back then. Today they're way more, if you go to a Catholic or even like Episcopal or you could just say that one that resembles how they used to do it back in the day, more like that, liturgic or rules of the original service, you could say it in that easy way to understand. That's what you're going to see is the vestments or the clothing that the priest or preacher wears, minister wears. Sometimes they'll even wear that little, it looks like a really decorated and odd, simple cloth scarf, right? When you get married, a lot of those guys will wear that, and it goes around their neck. Well, that is essentially that's a scarf that the shepherd would have to keep himself warm, right? So that's the vestments that they're wearing are similar to shepherds for that reason. And I mean, there's a lot of shepherds in this Christian religion, and even in the Hebrew religion, right? Claim to be one and the same from the Christian perspective. But anyways, my idea is I just think it's a little funny. That way, if you wonder why everything looks weird, there's a reason. It's because it's supposed to be a symbol, and if you don't know the symbols, it's going to look really odd. But I mean, that's with any culture, right? If you go to Japan or someplace you're not familiar with, or like for me, if I went to Southeast Asia, I had a friend who's from Cambodia, and I don't know as much about that culture or history as I do about some of the other, like China or Japan. They have rich, amazing history, and they built huge cities that are overrun in jungle today that we can't figure out, at least from Western perspective, without listening to their myths that we call myths, as it just means like we're not sure which part's like real or which part's made up, which sounds rude, but we even do that to ourselves. So I guess you could say some Western. I'm not going to say white because I think that's wrong. That's just a skin color. But some, not all, but some Western Europeans, it's a bit of a cynical way of doing it. But it's just science. It's a way of the scientific method so that we don't get hoodwinked, bamboozled. You know, what's another word? Suckered. We've said a lot of them today, haven't we? Anyway, so that gives you a brief idea of how it spread and how it comes back later. So there's been an interchange with these wars in Christian, where everybody, I'd like to point out, most people who are somewhat Christian, if not at least going to church, kind of like we have these days in some of the Muslim countries and stuff. Not everybody's Muslim, but because it's a mandated kind of it's an assumed country religion, everybody either goes for the camaraderie, if they believe or not. It's always been that way. It worked, like I would like to point out, we were talking earlier, same sort of idea and belief and feeling that was going on when Christianity was on the rise with the Romans and the Greek gods and stuff. So it's not like we've changed that much as humans, but that gives everybody a brief idea on how that starts the effect, and we start to narrow down to just Roman Catholicism at that time, due to the fact that Rome, obviously they have way more materials, they're from an actual empire, a fallen one, but they're still going to have way more riches than some European guys who were just starting to get enough trade routes back. They were they were on the losing side, Honey Highland Hopper, right on, of those Roman wars, right? The difference with the Pax Romana, peace, the Roman peace. And then ups and downs, I mean, they are way more agriculturalists versus what we might find with Rome. We don't know if it was always like that. We've seen some amazing structures. The Romans obviously didn't know everything. They wrote it down in a way that almost sounds like they do. That doesn't mean they actually did, though. I find it very interesting. There it is. So if you ever get caught, like, you got to be really wary when you're doing your fishing like this, guys. That side right there, I really should be out here like this, because if I got my line caught, if a line gets caught on something, you're gonna lose your fish. And if you're like, I got lucky today. I don't even know how that happened, but I blame my God. Blame in a good way, not in a bad way. But my reason, that would be, to me, in my view, right? I mean, if I'm going to the priesthood, why would I not, right? So just bear with me. It's just my point of view. You can have yours. I'm not saying you have to switch to mine, right? The best Christians are the ones who act out their faith, right? And that would go with anything. Buddhists, the best Buddhists, right? On that idea. We can disagree and still get along. That's the idea of what we're trying to create here in America. And still are. And what we should be doing, like, ignore the politicians, Americans. Come on. We're in charge, not them. We need to remember that. We don't all have to agree with how we do life, but we do need to get along, or we're going to fall. That's the only thing really that keeps America together. 9/11 proved that. We should be able to do it without horrible, sad circumstances. I mean, yes, don't get me wrong, we're all human, right? We need reminders. We're not. There's only like few people actually from this country that have been here the longest, right? The Native Americans, and that genetics is spread out throughout different cultures too, which is not all good, not all bad though. I think it's important to remember not all bad. But Christianity has an influence very much similar in some ways to genetics like that. Our beliefs can spread like we spread. It spreads with us, how we think. And I think it's interesting to note that when we are given tolerance and things, these beliefs can spread without brutality. And it's also, cool, Legends of the Sea. This book is about the origins of the Warsmith, signed Umbra. Now, this is interesting. This is a side note here. I'd like to point out, if you look at the point of this book here, you see that skull? That is a symbol of the Sea of Thieves. That nautical compass with a skull in the middle is the Sea of Thieves. The skull is the Sea of Thieves symbol with a nautical compass. That's pretty interesting. The Warsmith was actually the sister of, I think her name was Wanda, but of the Golden Sands before it got destroyed. She's actually the one who started the Reapers. She became a skelly, cursed person, so she's like turned into a skeleton. And she actually is the one who starts the Reapers in the lore in this game. And so if you work for the Reapers, you're actually working for Flameheart, because she's always been going on to the Flameheart. That's why they're actually called the Servants of Fire. Now, I mean, if you don't care about that stuff, it doesn't matter. I mean, you don't have to take it one way or the other. Just because you're a Reaper doesn't mean you actually have to sink people to take their stuff. I've actually seen people just take people's stuff and then join an alliance and be like, okay, now that I've got your, let's team up or whatever. That doesn't always work, but it's that you can be a pirate without having to be a brutal buccaneer. Net Salty, a genuine skeletal pirate. He was once a man, but was changed when creating a cursed cannonball from one of Flameheart's cannons. Ouch. His partner in alchemy was the weaponsmith, Wanda, who was forced him to take the brunt of the curse, but she did not escape unscathed. Flameheart's hatred fed on her own until she became the twisted skeleton captain, the Warsmith. And this story actually derives after you can buy the Warsmith costume, after the Warsmith ship look, after the Reapers come out. So they've actually made this story for the PvEer. So if you're a PvEer and you don't think Rare cares because it's hard to get rid of a bunch of toxic people, it really is, don't think so. They put this stuff out there for you guys. They have a certain person in here that even pretends is the person who writes all this down. There's a lore to this. They do care. Don't take everybody else's actions as Rare's actions. I love this game. It's getting better, which is cool. More people are starting to work together as that expands, which is amazing. She waged and failed war on the outposts. The Reapers, right? War on the outposts was the Reapers. I don't want to eat that. Don't let me die. I'm sorry. Huh? No. Right there. All right, we'll go to the fireman again. I'm fine with you get a purple lantern that time. Anyway, so what we see this as that derives and Christianity evolves. That's part of Europe, and it has believe it or not, some are thinking that the Irish we know they were on a lunar calendar, so it means they have to know some sort of math or have figured out when the moon stuff, and there's a whole slew on that. I'm going to get into that a totally different time on a more of a historical part, but what we see is, like, from that, we have men like George Muller, who are literally just out there and they help people. Sure, they are a preacher and they do their preaching on Sunday at a church. So if you don't like that stuff, you know not where to go, right? But the rest of the week, what are these guys doing? Did you know most of the rest of the week preachers are busy too? They're not just walking around or playing video games or, they're not, being like me, rambling for hours on end. They're out there getting food for the homeless. I've even given out, literally just go out and take old clothes I have, and I'll go give them to people during the winter because they need it. I was homeless. I know how cold it is here in Washington. More people die from hypothermia, not frostbite here in Washington State, in western Washington. More homeless during the winter months here because we have this long, wet, and it can be brutally cold. It can go from one day of being freezing wet, where you literally are not going to dry off the whole night, so you're freezing cold. And then it'll change within 15 minutes to an hour and drop to freezing temperatures. But because it's not enough moisture in there, it doesn't rain and you don't get any snow. So all you get is cold, freezing wind whipping off the ocean water, our sound, or even the ocean. And it's very easy to die that way. So I know what a warm coat means. I've given them out. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, I have my agenda. I'm honest about it. It's not a hidden agenda. Right, everybody has an agenda, or everybody has a motive, right? That's not all motives are bad. I think that we need to remember the use of words in this country for sure. How we feel about words is interesting, and that believe it or not, I took marketing 101 and 102, and believe it or not, that is actually like some of the first lessons they teach you is how people view and feel about words and not what the actual like definition of the word, because it can confuse people that they like, oh, I didn't know that that word's not all malevolent or evil, or you know, with a truly evil planned motive is what malevolent means. And we can see that not all Christians, through like people like George Muller, through people like C.S. Lewis, who writes this wonderful story, Lord of the Rings, for C.S. Lewis to try to explain to him what Christianity was. And of course, that obviously spurns C.S. Lewis. He goes out and writes a bunch of other wonderful stories. I'm not really sure, but I think Disney honestly stopped making all the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe movies, maybe just because it does get... C.S. Lewis goes right to the street with it in the last books with Christianity. That's just his belief, but that doesn't mean that Gandalf not as cool. It doesn't mean that Aslan isn't as cool. There's even hints of Christianity, you could say, in Harry Potter, just because she was writing it off of one of her favorite writers, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Why didn't she not, right? She is a writer, she loves writing, and those guys are some of the biggest modern fantasy writers not only in the world, but especially in Britain, right? So that makes sense. I know she's gotten some backlash for witchcraft and wizardry, and I'm like, well, what, J.R. Tolkien, believe it or not, got some backlash too. It is a little bit, it's hard. So, you can see that Christians don't always get it right. We say stuff we shouldn't, I think. I don't think we should always be like, Harry Potter, witchcraft, and the devil. And I'm like, well, did you know... Ooh, I see that right there. Did you know that... Oh, we got a little bit of treasure right there.
That's what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to actually...
Okay. Pull up the sail, and I'll see if I can't get us to slow down here. Maybe I can help you out here.
I was just trying to turn around.
Okay, I'm just going to turn the boat because we're still moving, so just do 180 and you should still be able to, or 360, excuse me. You should still be able to get, sorry about that. So, if she ever hears this, she probably won't, but it's just know if you're a Christian and you want to, or any religion, right? It doesn't have to be just Christianity. And you want to write something that's fantasy, but it's against or it's not part of the norm, culture, or presumed thought process of the current one you believe in. Just know that you might get some backlash, but also know that not everybody is like that. So, it's just some of it is us all learning to work together without being grumpy. Remember, grumpiness leads to being upset, and upset leads to anger, and anger leads to suffering. Yoda was onto something. Right? Alright, I think we're ready to go. You got everything? Cool. So, I want to say thanks for watching, guys. That's kind of the end of it, because it shows that if we didn't have Christianity, man, we're not going to have AA, right? We learned that. We learned that there were two types, and some of it has to do with not being able to have communication between Rome and the North, where it spread, and that started with this very educated Jewish guy named Saul, who actually we call Paul, because that's how you say his name if you're in Latin, right? That's the idea. He started it with the Greeks, and they sent books up because of some, monks and stuff, and a funky little Comrie guy named Patrick. That's actually his Irish name. I don't remember his Welsh name. It would sound very different, like my last name, Fionach. Sounds different in that old Scots Gaelic than the old Scottish Irish, or Scotty, which actually just means enemy, and that's what they call it, the Dalriad Irish, or Dalriad Irish. Anyways, there's lots of fun like that, but in the end, you can see that we're not really, as human beings, we haven't changed that much, and we're not that far different, but that does not mean we should ever, ever, ever give up on the goal of trying to get along. As soon as we do, that's when everything goes south, guys. And I think it's important to know that we need to find commonality without that Roman style of Pax Romana. Remember, Rome didn't start as an empire. They started as a republic, something that had an idea of where we get some of our American freedom today. And that that sort of trading empire and stuff is a bit better. Don't get me wrong; they have their own things, and it's way more. I shouldn't say way more complicated, but they obviously, even the Republic had their armies. But the idea is that we can have peace without swords. We have to just decide to do it together. Literally, everybody, every single person has to decide that we can tolerate the other person. I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, well, I just can't tolerate stupid people. And I'd be like, well, if that's your attitude, that's kind of a stupid attitude. Because that's not tolerated. There's no tolerance in there, man. Everybody makes dumb mistakes. Like, as soon as you start working together with people and you start making the mistakes, man, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I guess I am an idiot too. And I think I also said that in this one too, as the Hebrews would say, and if they don't use the word sin, that's Greek for what they believe. Either way, what we weren't meant to be is what stumbles us, sin. The weren't meant to be, but it also is what makes us equal in a way. And it's what helps us remind us that we're all kind of dumb. And we all, if we can tolerate or forgive that and learn to have some faith or trust in each other, that is gonna be the best. I mean, honestly, it's what lets religions spread. And if there is one that's actually right, that's the only way we're gonna find out. It ain't gonna be with guns and swords, I'll tell you that much. Definitely not nuclear bombs. And that would certainly quiet things down a bit, but that sort of horrifying event all the same, and it ruins the planet in which we do love. So, well, thanks for watching, guys. You can check me out, and this is going to be another Sunday one. I've got to take a day tomorrow and do a bunch of paperwork and upload, and I got so many videos to trim. I've only got a few teaching ones still, but if you're interested in philosophy and stuff and history, this is one. Obviously, I'm doing one from stuff I'm going to school at, so you do get a semi-professional and a perspective. So you know that some of it, you can either look it up if you want. I would highly recommend, like I said, I'll tell you again, I would highly recommend that Audible book. It's on Audible, I love them. But it's called How the Irish Saved Modern Civilization. Let me find it really quick. Kenobi, that's also a good book, but it's not one of the Lords of the Sith. No, it's Endless Knots. It's a good one. Lord mercy. Come on, help me out here. Welsh Legends and Myths. Hello there. Path of Destruction. All kinds of stuff here. The Case for Christ, that's an interesting one. Switch, that's an interesting one. Where would it go? Fall of Gondolin, that's another Lord of the Rings one. Really good. The Mabinogion, it's not Lord of the Rings, it's Rings of Powers. That's gonna be super nice. Oh man. Thank you, big man. See? Jesus had the wheel, and I'm over here complaining about Audible. Or I'm just lucky. It could be. I know somebody's probably like, that's the luck of the Irish. So that doesn't exactly work the way you might think. The Lagoon of Whispers. Yeah, I was trying to go to Wanderer's Refuge. Woo! Oh my goodness, the Reaper! Oh. And now it gets interesting. Say what?
Let's go north and south.
You want to sell? Yeah, we could do that.
Let's go up north and south.
I would go south because he doesn't look like he sees us. So we'll go west and then south. So like literally directly away from him, around Mermaid's Hideaway and on to Plunder out. Maybe we could just go up north. We'll see.
New Golden Sands is literally up north.
Yeah. We're gonna need to, because we should be able to see him from where he's at. Oh, there's a storm. Look at that. Again, that's also something I could obviously relate to some of the biblical, like Moses and the pillar of fire. I think even if you're not like a believer in Christ, I think the actually Hebrews have some of the coolest, just epic myths, right? Some people would believe the Bible's a myth, but either way, I mean, I don't think they should just be shunned all out because there's been some bad apples in Christianity. I mean, there's been bad apples in any kind of belief system. Some would say Karl Marx, who believed in evolution, was a bad apple. That'd be evolution, but all evolutionists are just evil people to the core, right? That would be silly. Even our Christianity would say all men have evil hearts, that we do evil, not constantly all the time, but that however we're doing something, we end up being selfish with it at some point. Like, we spoil our own good things we do. So that shows that we're like there's some equality. There's some the idea still stays the same, even if it's dressed a little differently. You could say that there's a kernel of truth in there that you might be able to hunt down if you wanted to. I think, and we might as well just go to the sovereigns. Anyways, but thanks for watching. So I'm actually just gonna hang out with my wife after this. You got some fishing, and you see how I just like pull one of each bait and fish with that. If you have each bait, you don't have to just look every single one up. You can if you're like really wanting to like just get it done and get it over with. I would suggest looking it up. There's some great fishing videos and fishing blogs and stuff on there. But if you're just like you want to have some relaxed fishing because you actually like to fish or something, I would suggest grabbing just switching your bait every time. It's really easy. I would suggest also fish. We learned today fishing each different one. You can make quite a bit of money here fishing by simply just picking up stuff on the beach, and it's I think in one day if you're just kind of doing this, you
put
can
those
make,
back.
I think 200 to if it's a really good day like 300,000.
Those are going to the hunter's call.
Sorry, she was talking to me
That's
about
why I
my
left them
kids.
there.
Not bad.
That's what happens
So
when you
fishing,
get distracted.
fishing can make quite a bit of money, obviously.
That's
if
right.
you're
I
picking
just
stuff. Okay, go ahead. Just fire away.
keep talking, baby.
Okay, so you got this stuff in here too, yeah? That's Hunter's Call.
Ooh, that shouldn't have been in there.
Yep, this is Hunter's Call. That stuff isn't. So, anyways, but I have different views if you guys are interested on my YouTube and stuff, and I have stuff that's straight Sea of Thieves. And like I said, Sunday is just going to be the day where I talk like this stuff. If you want to have different, want to watch like other action and stuff, I have pumped up action stuff too, man. I love like the Aliens game and all that kind of stuff. I'm looking into that new Red Dead Redemption. That's actually kind of very, in some historical accurate. My grandpa used to talk about days like that. He lived in Wyoming. It's very right after those eras, so he has some inside information. It's dead soon, unfortunately. But anyways, thanks for watching, and we will catch you guys next time. Slán.